about that screen is that it was made up of not one screen, because no one could make a flat screen as big as that, so it was made up with 3 panels.
Oh, really?
And they couldn't. Oh, we're live, by the way, and they couldn't stitch together the panels. So when I turned the first one on, it had a dark patch in the middle. There was a third in the middle that was like 10% long, darker than the rest.
Oops.
And
but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, sorry, we just went live. And so this is Boudewijn, and we're just talking about my wonderful old first style Apple flat screen thing that cost $3,500. And yeah, and so I'll just carry on. So so it's made up of 3 panels. No one could make a panel that big. And then you look at what we have now, and it was 3 screens. And so that monitor was in my studio, and I called them up immediately, and they said, "Don't be silly, that doesn't happen." So I took a picture and I emailed it to them, and they went, "Oops, oops." And so then they said, "Oh, we'll send you another one." And I said, "Well, what about the one I've got?" And they said, "Oh, don't worry about that." So I had a trip coming up with my son to West States, Vegas, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all that kind of stuff. We was doing a big trip. And so I had 2 of those in my house. One that didn't work, and one that was the new one. And guess what happened with the new one? The other one was, the new one was exactly the same. So they said, "Guess what? We'll send another one." So I had 3 of them in my house. And then I went off to the States, and they were $3,500 each. I called them up and said, "What do I do about these 2 monitors?" Because the third one was okay.
Yeah.
So I went off on the trip,
You keep them.
and I tried to use my credit card to get out of Disneyland. And there was no money in my account because Apple
charged you.
had actually, without my consent or anything to do with me being involved, they had billed my credit card for 2 months. So I ended up paying over 10 grand for 1 monitor and went mental. Picked up the phone, and within half an hour the money was back in my account. It was unreal.
It wasn't policy, it was a mistake.
Well, I think it was just their policy that something was outstanding and there was this kit and it hadn't been paid for. So instead of calling the person to find out why, they then just said,
especially if you do that the second time.
Just bill him.
It's not that much.
Really, someone buys 3 brand new ones. Anyway, so yeah, that was that monitor. So anyway,
although nowadays it's quite normal to have 3 monitors. When I work now, I usually have 3 monitors on my desk.
Well, on all my desks, you can see there's 2 on there, and the other one that's home is usually here. And on every workstation I have is at least 2 monitors, and it's only now that I don't have 3, because there's 1 monitor is a pain. You have to have. Once you're used to 2, then you sit there and you just think, "I need another. I need another." And so for me, it was always InDesign in the middle, Illustrator on one, Photoshop on the other, or Final Cut Pro, Motion, and then Sound Studio. So when I'm doing video, I've just got them all in front of me.
And then once you have more than one, you never want to go back to one.
Exactly, it's really hard. Big. It's really hard.
Even if you have the biggest IMAX screen, it's still not convenient if that's your only screen.
Yeah, one screen that's really big is when you're actually focusing on that one thing, then you're doing this.
Yeah.
You're actually moving your head to kind of take in the enormity of it.
Yeah.
And
all the pixels become really small.
Yeah.
Which is becoming a problem at my age, but...
Well, also, yeah, I mean, you write apps and stuff, so... and with the web these days, also the fact that each screen now can have potentially more pixels because of the Retina thing that Apple brought in, that from a developer point of view just adds a whole world of hurt, doesn't it?
Well, it's not so terrible. I thought it would be more complicated to do, but as long as you bear in mind that all the graphics that you use have to be Retina, then it's pretty easy to manage. It's not that complicated to do. So.
Well, I just find that because I'm a Luddite, and well, not a Luddite, I'm just a dinosaur, because I remember HTML being just HTML, and there being no mobile phones or iPads and stuff. So you've only got a 72 dpi screen and So 72 DPI was 72 DPI.
And it was enough.
Life was really simple back
Yep.
then to make web pages.
Yep.
And then I look at things like WordPress or DNN now, and then you have to upload the image like 4 or 5 times for all the different potential uses and devices.
Yeah.
And it's just a pain.
I remember the first time I saw my a Retina screen. First I wasn't impressed, but then I got glasses and looked at them. Then I was impressed, so I knew I needed glasses. It's just Retina. You have to have good eyesight for Retina.
Yeah, I've just got to do something here because the screen.
It's a bit.
There's always something I forget
2
every
minutes,
2 minutes. Like never, dude. Please go away, and please also don't shut it off ever, because that would be a good thing too.
That's my default.
Just
setting.
while we're here.
Yeah.
So look, just so that people know who you are and what you do. We've known each other for what? God,
I can't even
15
remember how long.
well, I was in Ireland for nearly 10 years, and I knew you.
It's at least 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's 16 to 18 years because
it could be up to 18.
We met.
Didn't we even meet before I had Color Plaza?
Yeah, because you were like me on the circuit of presenters when I started working for Adobe as a presenter. You were doing the same for HP.
Yeah, but before that, I was doing that for LaserMaster, which later on became ColorSpan, which later on became HP.
Ah, right. I can't remember. All I know is that we met when I was doing, from my point of view, when I started doing the Adobe thing.
Yeah.
I branched out from just being only in the UK, and then suddenly was all over, well, over half the world at least. And then we just continuously bumped into each other because the life there is you go from one show to another show to another show, and you're just a professional show person.
Like Dubai and
the oddest of places. Yeah. And so we've known each other for a really long time. And I was only explaining to somebody who was asking me this morning about who the fuck is Bowdy?
I can imagine. Yeah.
Who the fuck is Bowdy? And so I started off by saying, you are the only person that I have any contact from that previous life that I have. I don't have any contact with anybody from a presenting point of view. No. There's lots of friends I have who were customers in sense, who I met and then they became friends. Yeah. But in terms of being on that circuit and obviously having loads of acquaintances when you travel around together and meet on a regular basis. You're the oldest person. I mean, like when I think about it, that's a long time.
It is.
16 to 18 years.
It is.
And so you were there really as the guru for color management.
Yeah, I was usually asked by Hewlett-Packard to enlighten the public on what Hewlett-Packard had done in their printers, which was quite unique. Yeah. And Hewlett-Packard has never been great at explaining that because they basically had an advantage over all the others that they never really used well.
Is that advantage still there today?
It is to some extent, not completely.
Have the competitors caught up?
They have, but it's still not the same because Canon now has one model that has a built-in spectrophotometer. So a spectrophotometer is a device that can do color profiles. Yeah. And Epson has it as an add-on to most of their printers, but it's very expensive.
It's an expensive add-on. So just so that people know, so I'll start with this, and then if questions come in, then we'll deal with them. But basically, at the moment now, you still kind of know about printers and stuff. That's still a part of your life.
Yep.
We've got a couple of things to show.
Yep.
The color management side, still a part of your life, because that's a part of obviously the software and the applications. Color management is a part of that. You now have moved into app development.
Yes.
So you make apps for mobile devices.
For mobile devices and for Mac.
And some of that is on a consumer level, say like mum and dad type stuff, or my nephew, it's on a consumer level. But some of it would be on a professional level too. Yeah. So you make professional service-based apps. Yeah. Okay, and we can show some of those. Yeah. That's cool. So the thing we should do is, because you started talking about something that turned me on. So many years ago, when I first moved to Ireland, I remember when I first moved to Ireland, I said to you, I need a printer, and you said, buy this.
Get that one.
And I bought this, which was the HP, yeah, you can see that. So
Yeah.
I bought the HP Z2100 Photo.
Yeah. And would you believe it's still a product today?
Oh, I know, because I have a story beyond belief about my printer, right? My printer. Because I bought it for two reasons, I think. One, because you recommended it. And the next was, in your description of just buy it, it has the spectrometer.
Yeah, spectrometer.
So it has a built-in, and it's not an additional add-on with a high price, and it just builds profiles itself. And that, even for me, and I kind of know a bit about my shit, even for me that kind of was, whoa. So I was thinking, how much is that going to be? Is that going to be $3,000? Is that going to be $4,000? And I was thinking it's going to be a huge amount of money. So the person I had working with me at the time, I said, see if you can find one. Yeah. And she went online and she found Jigsaw. I don't even know if they're in business anymore. I don't think they are in the UK, but they were a hardware and software salespeople online. And they did a deal that if you bought it, it was only £1,000, and they gave you £200 back, because they were doing a special promotion. So I got my brand new printer delivered to Ireland for £800.
That's a good deal.
That was an insane deal. And not for 1 millisecond did I ever regret buying that printer. And then all my friends, every single friend I've got who's a photographer, they've all got Epson. Every single one of them.
Yeah, it seems to be the default, and there's a logic to that, because...
No, I understand. The cachet to the name Epson is like Nikon to photography.
Yeah, but there's also a technical reason for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Which they did not manage to explain changed. Because the technical reason was that Epson was the only printer that was capable of true photographic prints.
Yeah, when I started in desktop publishing, you wouldn't even look at HP because they didn't have this.
It was horrible.
So there was only one name, and so for them, you know, any company that has complete monopoly over an industry, what do? They just chill, don't they?
Yep.
They don't kind of push the boundaries, because why? That costs money.
Yeah, that's true.
So they stayed the same for a really long time.
Yes. Well, they haven't done in the recent times, because in recent times, instead of Hewlett-Packard, Canon has become more active.
You mean like that one over there?
The one from the cameras.
Look, no, that one just there.
Yeah, I like that one. But then...
and I'm telling you, that only cost £250. It was the best little desktop multi-device, you know, scanning, copying and everything else. It was the top of the range one, because you have to, right? Yeah. And it prints colour by default so well. But when I go back to my very first Epson printer, the money that I wasted on paper and ink trying to get it to print something good, and then you find the recipe and it just works, and then you never change it. Well, that just,
and you hope it stays the same.
Out the box, you just print, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, the thing with printers is that if you have a just consumer printer, it's usually geared to printing pretty okay. It's not the best, because if you try to get the best results from it, it's hard. But if you just print to it, it prints better than a special kind of printer that you really have to drive with the right profiles and right settings to get a good printout. A printer without real color management prints better than one with a lot of color management that hasn't been done right.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's much easier to screw things up with color management than to fix them.
So the thing that, when people used to come to my studio in Ireland and they used to see my printer, and then they would say to me,
so why isn't it Epson?
Yeah, exactly, because they think they come and then they just think, okay, they're going to see Hasselblad, they're going to see Nikon, they're going to see Apple, they're going to see Canon, and then they naturally just go, well, where's the Epson printer? And then they see me with a HP and they go, what have you got that crap for? They go, yeah, because it's really cool, because it's everything that my friend told me. The nozzles never clog, ever, period. That means I can leave that printer off, and I did this once. It was off for maybe 18 months at one point in time, because I don't make a lot of prints. So it was physically turned off. And all I did was I turned it on and I printed, and it printed perfectly. There was no lines in it. If you did that with an Epson,
it wouldn't print very well.
You could always maybe fix it, but there is no way you're not going to get lines in it, that nothing is dried up, and often on a smaller one, it's not economical to fix it.
No.
You just buy a new one. Because I can't remember what it was, there was this silver one that I had and my friend got the same thing.
The 3800?
I can't remember what it was called.
A2?
It was A3, it was an A3. Oh yeah, it was small, it was smallish, but it did A3. And it was just a nightmare. I mean, once you got it working, it was fantastic.
If you use it regularly, it's fine.
Yeah, then it's fine, it's not a problem.
Although you still, with Epson, you sometimes have to do nozzle check.
Regularly, it's like it takes maintaining.
Yeah.
Where that thing,
it's pretty automatic.
all I used to do was I used to get a new batch of paper, and I would then do a print on the default profile that would come with it, and they would go, whoa, amazing. Then I would say, yeah, but watch this. Put another piece of paper in, and then you go to the utility and just go, profile, calibrate and profile. Yeah. And without me touching it, it just does it. Prints out the squares, the grid, it leaves it for 10 minutes so it dries, then it feeds it back in, builds a profile, and then leaves it really easy for me to distribute it on other machines.
Yeah, it's also a server for the color profile, so any other user that hooks up to
and then
you
see people's jaws go, what? And then you just show the print and they go, yeah, I was happy with that one. Yeah. But this is always 5%, minimum 5% better, minimum. And that's only when the default profile is a really good one to the paper. It's always, always better. And then when you've got a default profile that's maybe not that accurate, then when you profile it for the expense of one piece of paper, it was just a no-brainer. But I've got to tell you the story about my printer, man. Because when I moved here, my printer went to 3 different locations in Ireland. It got dropped once. Not a great height. It was only dropped by about 2 feet, maybe. But it landed on my foot as well, so that wasn't cool. So I was a bit unsure as to how it was going to work, and then I just turned it on and it worked perfectly. But then then I had it when I left, and then the removal company, I could never understand this. They were really, I ordered this really big truck, and they said, yeah, but how much does your stuff weigh? And I said, I don't know.
You never tried weighing it.
Am I going to weigh all the boxes and the tables and stuff? Well, you know, because you can't go over 1,000 kilos. And it's like, when I look at it and I think, well, that's not 1,000 kilos.
Well.
Holy shit. So I filled this lorry, and I thought I was going to only fill it by about 2/3, and it was to the rafters. And I left enough space for the printer, and the printer was going in last because it was all wrapped in duvets and stuff. And that's heavy, right?
It is heavy.
That's a heavy thing.
Although you had a 24-inch, so that was slightly...
Not as heavy, obviously, as a real big one.
is a bit
and
heavier.
The dude who was the driver of my stuff in this lorry, it was a Polish guy who could speak so little English. We had a really good time together, but so little English. And then he looked at me, and then he just went, heavy lorry. So he said, come here. And he showed me the distance between the top of the tyre, and it had come right down. And so they've got gizmos in the cab where he can press a button, and it just pushes it up. It lifts it up, so that the people, when they get on the ferry, that they... And he said, heavy lorry. And then he went, oh. So I was in the mood that it's fine, I'll buy another one when I get to where I'm getting. And so I left it in my house, and I was renting my house. And so the landlord, my friend John, came over, and I said, John, do you think you could sell it? And then, you know, we'll split the money or whatever. And he said, yeah, no problem. So then I'd left my printer, and I was a bit sad because I was really attached to my printer. And then John calls me up, and he said, yeah, I've had this guy who wants it, and he just wants to know, are there any cables with it? Does it work? And I said, look, it's as seen, so let's make it just a few £100. Yeah. So somebody buys it in Sligo. And then a couple of weeks after, I get talking to the guy who's doing my new website, and he's in Dublin. And he said, I can't believe it, my bloody printer's broken down. What was that printer you had? Because that was amazing, wasn't it? I said, yeah, it was a HP 7100. You're bound to be able to find one second hand. Someone's got to be selling one second hand somewhere. So he goes online and he tries to find one, and he can't find one. And then I just said, it's unbelievable that I sold it. via someone else.
Yeah.
And why it never occurred to me to offer it to my friends, because I've got 3 or 4 friends in Dublin. They're all photographers who I would have given it to them. I wouldn't have needed any money.
Yeah.
So he's like swearing at me and saying, "You moron, why didn't you tell me?" And then Declan then, said his name anyway.
Oops.
Declan then calls me up on Skype and says, "Hey, I found a printer." There was this guy, and he said, "It's a recently purchased thing." He gave it a service, and Declan bought it, and it was my printer.
Ooh, and
but through another person.
How much more expensive was it?
Oh, it doesn't matter what the money was. There was a little bit of kind of misalignment with what I was told it went for and what he paid for it and that. Right. But basically, he had a guy come round, so he got it for a couple of €100, and he had it serviced, had the belt changed and all that kind of stuff, and he's got my printer. Yeah. So when I Skype with him, my printer's behind his head in his studio.
Oh, right.
Which is unreal.
Yeah.
But so you know, it's not gone out of my kind of sphere really. It's still there. And
no, and I think it's still, for a lot of people, it's still the end product, because not everything goes to screen.
My mantra for everything, to try and cut through the bullshit, because, you know, we're all geeks basically. If anybody who's watching this is going to be a geek to some degree, you know, we're geeks. We're into the minutiae. So when we look at our cameras and we look at our computers, we kind of care. You know, I would ask you, so how much RAM you got in there? How big's your hard drive? Doesn't make you work any better. It doesn't make your work any better quality.
Doesn't make me faster. Well, no, not really.
Maybe. My argument always is, if you don't know what you're doing with a computer, a fast computer just means you fuck up quicker. Yeah. And then you play that. Instead of stopping and thinking about what you do, you will just go Rolodex version 1 didn't work. I can then wipe what I've done, and I can redo it really quickly. That's just mental. Yeah. So in the early days of desktop publishing, when I used to be a consultant to a number of companies, there was this one company, and I purposely said that do not upgrade the machines we're using for Quark Express. Right. Because that point in the whole process, having a faster machine, doesn't speed up the process. And if you have a fast machine, they're unlikely to go through all the colours and make sure the right ones overprint and the ones that knock out, and eliminate the postscript errors before it goes to the rip. Because if you don't stop and check and you just say print, 9 times out of 10 there'll be a postscript error, but it will take you an hour and a half before you find it. So what we want actually is a slow machine, which makes people think, I should double check this. Yeah. You get more. And that worked. It worked.
It's a bit like digital photography. You don't really have to care about the shot, because you just take 20 and you look at which one's good.
But this is my whole point, that slow stuff, or even no screen, when I used to do the scanning stuff, you used to have to visualize. Yeah. And when I used to see like 8% dot of cyan and maybe a 22% dot of magenta and a 64% dot of yellow, I used to have to really be in tune with that, and then eventually I would be able to look at colours and like all the different blues up there, or your skin tone, or that colour green, or any other thing. Everything in here is black and white, so it's unreal.
There's quite a lot of black and white here.
So I would be able to look at a colour tint, and I'd be able to break that down into CMYK, and all that happened over the years of experience. I got more and more and more and more accurate, and then when I would see those tints being displayed in the little LED readout, I'd be able to then go in and fine-tune the skin tone so it printed correctly. Yeah. I haven't met anybody that's under 30 or 40 years old that will ever be encouraged to develop that skill, because they don't need to. No. Because all they do is look at screen and they just go, yeah, it's a bit more red. Yeah. Yeah, but what red is it? And it's only that red on that screen. Is it colour managed? Yeah. And also the other thing that's happened now is that, and this is what I was going to get to you, ask you while you're here, is I'm getting to the point now that because the pendulum now is most publishing, it's most publishing. I'm not saying that how Vogue is created doesn't matter, but that's the exception to the rule. Yep. Nearly every single thing that goes through a design company and agency now is weighted massively towards digital delivery. Yep. And in the old days, before iPads and iPhones and such like, when it was only screens, colour management used to be something really big in my mind. Yep.
But
because
not anymore.
Not anymore,
No.
because you can't color manage these devices.
No. Well, and
So to some degree, you're not really doing anybody a service if you stick to your principles and say, yeah, but my screen's color managed, blah, 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 blah. They're not really going to care about that, because they're going to get the images, they're going to put the page together, and they're not going to view it on their screen. They're going to go straight to their phone and their iPad, and they're going to go, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
But the images need to be a bit brighter. And on your calibrated screen, they could be perfect.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
the contrast ratios on screens is huge.
It is a problem that a lot of people spend a lot of attention on getting their images perfect, but really don't understand one single bit about color management, and have set up their display in a way that's completely inconsistent with where they're going in the rest of the process.
Absolutely. But now, because the end game is so many different platforms, it's really hard now.
Yep.
To where I started, it was device dependent color.
Yep.
We used to scan that transparency for that size on that page, on that document that's being printed on that paper, on that printing press.
Yep.
It was device dependent. And
Yep.
you couldn't then take those films and then
Use them on
multi-use them on a newspaper,
No,
right?
it wouldn't
Because
work.
it had to be scanned again. And
Yep.
customers used to go, why am I paying 50
Yep.
quid for another scan? Huh?
Yeah.
So there was a major need for device independence.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Well, what you get now is you have to go to the average of everything that you have in your production as a printing company, and that will be your workflow. And everything has to go down to the average that every device can obtain, and that's what now is the standard. And they might have a machine that has a much wider gamut, but it's not used because what they want supplied doesn't use that.
But the other thing that I find all the time when I say this to people at shows and things in the past is they go, yeah, but I've calibrated my screen.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, but then what did you do? What did you calibrate it to? And
Yeah,
then,
if
and
you
then
ask
they
them
go,
one question, which temperature did you
and then they
calibrate
go,
it to? Huh?
which is a little
don't
bit
know.
like when you say to the dog, walkies. It doesn't really know what that means. It just knows it's kind of interesting, and you're just going, what? And then I would say, yeah, but you may have used a Spider or an X-Rite calibrating device that automatically just does it for you, and then you look at it and your screen is different to the manufacturer's defaults.
Yep.
But then that's only standardized the foundation of its reproduction, and now what you have to do is tell it with another calibration and output profile what you want it to match.
Yep.
Because at the moment, all it is not matching anything.
No.
So now you have to go to the output profile and choose the output profile either for a printing press or whatever it is. And I have only met a handful of people that do that.
Yeah. And there is a fundamental disconnect between the color management that a photographer usually uses and what the printing companies still use. Because they come from two different things. Printing companies always did profiles. They had to. They've done profiles since 1980-something when they invented profiles. And they were based on using a certain color of temperature, which is 5,000 Kelvin. And photographers don't like yellow screens. And if you turn their displays to 5,000 Kelvin, they think their screen is yellow. They don't like it. So they prefer to have more a color that's native, or closer to the native color of the display, which is in most cases much more than 6,500. So they go to a 6,500 Kelvin default color. If you don't set up anything and just say, I want to calibrate my screen, it will be 6,500 Kelvin.
Yeah.
And your printer will be calibrated to 5,000 Kelvin. So there's a disconnect already.
See, I never, ever fully subscribe to color management, ever.
It's not perfect.
Exactly.
I'm not saying it's perfect.
So I didn't, because I come from the time where I did the first form of color management with a densitometer, a graph paper, a big printing press. You'd make it print something very similar to the swatches that you would get color management to do. But I would design my own ones. And then you would work out from that gray balance, you'd work out from that print density, the compression curve of the press, and then you would work out luminosity from that on graph paper, feed that into the scanner. Then you would then deal with color, but color wasn't measurable.
No.
Because when you followed the rules of measuring color, it never bloody worked. it was the color side of it, making colors reproduce, was down to human judgment. The other ones, print density, gray balance, all that was fine, not a problem. And that was absolute color management. That was me taking a scanner and making it profiled. I didn't know I was doing a profile because we just called it calibration.
Yeah, there's a fundamental difference between calibration, which basically is linearization, and profiling.
But in what I was doing both. I was just making sure that if you just had a really good transparency and all you wanted was that reproduced as it is on that printing press, you did nothing on the scanner, and its basic values, it's the customer values that you made from the basic values were the personal traits of that, or the individual traits of that printer was in that environment, was brought into the scanner. And all you had to do was a white and a black and print, and it would have been the same as the transparency. That was the goal. And the level of quality that I could produce by doing it manually with graph paper and a densitometer was infinitely better than the very first time I ever saw color management. I drove with a guy from London to Brussels. We went to Agfa and they were one of the first people that were looking into it. And I already
colorblind, the application by any chance?
What?
Colorblind? It was
actually, it was. I think colorblind. And blind was a really, really, really good word to use. Or color shite would have been even better.
They thought about that, but it didn't go well in marketing.
And I couldn't believe the conversation I was having with this 21-year-old guy who's never known anything about anything, and the only thing he's done is probably been an intern, and then he's worked at this company, and so he's looking at, and I've given him some transparencies. They've scanned them in with profiles and stuff, and then they've done the proofs, and it's meant to match. And so I've got the expectation that this thing should match really close to the transparency, and you couldn't have got any further away. And then he was then looking at it in the light booth and everything, and he said, yeah, but the reds are good. But that the car's really close, isn't it? Really?
Is that it now? Color management is not new anymore, because ICC profiles have now exist for a very long time. But manufacturers have not done a whole lot to improve on workflows. Setting up a workflow to have consistent color management is still, Adobe does it in their suite. But if you have to put something in there or take it out and produce it, that's not Adobe, then it's all different.
Yeah, but when you buy the Creative Cloud as a brand new user and you've never used anything from Adobe before, and there will be people like that, right? So you go onto the Creative Cloud and you download Photoshop, InDesign and
leave the default.
Illustrator, and you leave it on default. The default setup for Adobe Photoshop is...
It's still completely wrong.
Web printing in America. 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 That's the worst form of printing that is around today.
Probably America is one of the few places where Quark Express is still being used a lot more. Because nobody in Europe uses Quark Express anymore, I think.
That's a funny story, actually, because a friend of mine, Rick, who's actually in Mexico right now, has decided that he hates the Creative Cloud thing. And he's going to be in that chair in a few months' time, and that's going to be an amazing one. And he actually texted me this morning. He said, I'm moving to Quark. Because he hates the methodology of Adobe's Creative Cloud thing.
You are locked in.
And it's appalling. I love the model. As long as you deliver software with value every year that has something of value.
That's gone.
Not sprinkles on top of glitz and Formica shite. Something of meaning. There should at least in every application be something that makes you go, whoa, that will change my workflow. Maybe not for every job, but I can't wait to use that on a job.
Well, if you see what Adobe does, for instance, with Photoshop, they bring in new features that nobody uses.
It's
like
just
you can do three-dimensional design.
It's like a go faster stripe on the side of a car.
It's ridiculous things where you show that there is still room for improvement when you use your actions. So if they would focus more on getting better quality instead of adding more features that nobody uses.
Well, yeah. All that happens when you plug up software with loads and loads of features is you create, as you know, because you write software, you have more things to debug
Yeah.
When you want to change something on a structural basis, on the structural basis, you have more things that could potentially go wrong. So having the same feature but with lots of different interfaces, which is image adjust in Photoshop, it's just a joke. And all those things, not one of them has ever evolved. And the problem is today, with all raw software is made today, Photoshop's the de facto standard that they have to match. So what do? They just copy the hue and saturation model. Yeah. They copy the curve and do an S shape, and wow.
But even, I mean, even Adobe, I mean, the default RAW settings for Adobe RAW are completely wrong.
Well, it's the worst raw converter out of all raw converters. That doesn't mean to say it's not usable.
No, it's usable, but
technically,
it's technically weird. Yeah. And the fact that you can choose some profiles that you have no idea what you're selecting.
Have you seen the new ones? The
yeah,
Adobe
I saw something about it.
The Adobe Color.
It doesn't make sense to me to make another one and start with that.
Yeah, there's so much that could be said on that. And maybe we can get into that, but I'm not sure we can get everything done today if we want to get into that. But that's going to be a focus, one of my focus programs on the new Adobe thing. Yeah. It's just a joke beyond a joke, really.
Well, the thing is that if you try to open a RAW and you can't even see that you're clipping your highlights when you're using the default, that's kind of odd. It's kind of a fundamental thing.
Well, it's earlier on today, because I go to the cafe sometimes, and my new, I guess, what we used to maybe watch TV for information sometimes. You might watch documentaries and stuff. I don't go anywhere near a TV now. The only thing I look on a TV is sporting events. Liverpool, really good result this week. I really love Manchester City too, but man, seriously, what a game! What a game! But I only watch sporting events, so I haven't watched a TV show on a TV for so many years. So I'm a YouTube.
I can remember your TV
freak.
Room in Ireland where you had the beamer do sports
shows. Oh no,
shows.
that's all it is
no, you just use it for sports.
10 feet wide, HD, coming out of a skybox. It was just wicked. With a sound system. Oh God, I miss that. And I've got nowhere I can do that in my house at the moment. I don't even want to. But the thing is, I don't watch conventional stuff. I watch YouTube now all the time. All the time. Now I can't remember what I was saying that for. What was I saying that for? What was I saying that for?
It was your story. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. What were we talking about? Bollocks and bullshit.
We were getting distracted.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about the different different color settings in Adobe and why they're horrible, and then...
Oh, I'll just come back to it. I don't know what it is now. I have no idea what that was. But it was a really good point, and I do this all the time. I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to talk about this because you've known me for a really long time, right? So, can you see what's written up on the wall, on the door above your head?
Let's see. Yeah. It's a good one. But it's on the wrong side of the door, isn't it?
No. Just so that you know what it is, it says...
Please be silent.
It says shut up. ... exclamation mark. And it's for a really good reason. Because Ron, the first guy, thoughts on Affinity. Yeah, I'll give you my thoughts on Affinity Photo in a minute. No, it's not as bad as that actually. It is. But shut up is there because, and it was really huge. When I did the first one of these a couple of weeks ago, because this is new, I'm still finding my feet. Yeah. I've been a speaker in front of very large audiences for my whole life. And what I couldn't understand was the second I turned off the broadcast with the one with Ron, I was depressed. Just internally, that I went, I can't remember Ron speaking. I couldn't remember him getting a word in edgeways. And he is such a lovely guy. And he would never, like you'd interrupt me, you know what I mean? You'd fight back.
If I don't, you'd be talking all the time.
Exactly. And I was thinking to myself, oh, this is really shit. So for a week, I thought about it constantly because I knew Shark was coming on, and Shark is a much more aggressive.
He will talk, and he will.
And me and him have amazing conversations. We meet every week, and we have a good couple of hours. We'll go for lunch and stuff, and he will come on many times. And even I think he was just a little bit intimidated being here. I'm not too sure how many times he's done this kind of thing. I think probably never. But he was good. But in the future, when we start like getting into politics and all that kind of shit, it will be really cool. Yeah. And I realized why. I realized why I struggled in the first one, and I just thought, oh my God, it was terrible. It was just a monologue. Well, everything I do is a monologue because I'm presenting to that camera every week. And when you're on stage, you're not having a conversation with the people in the audience. And when I used to work with Adobe, I'd do it for the whole day. I would, instead of just going on for 40 minutes and then talking to people, having conversation with people. That used to happen, but only after 8 days of me doing a monologue, because I'd go from After Effects, Premiere, into Photoshop, Illustrator. I would just do them all.
But the thing is that people do watch this because it's you talking to someone. If it would be nobody talking to me, then probably nobody would watch.
Yeah, but the variable in this is you and who sits there.
Well, I do agree that there is something that different people can bring, because we all have different viewpoints, and you will only get people here that have a viewpoint.
That's the reason you're here.
Yeah.
And I was just gutted. And then I started thinking about it, and I just thought, in my life, I've never been really that sociable. I mean, I've never been somebody that goes to the pub or the club or anything like that. It's never been a part of my life.
But you did talk about this for many, many years. I remember you talked about this over 6 years ago.
At the beginning of YouTube and internet and stuff, I just thought this would be a wicked thing to do. And then for a whole bunch of different reasons. And the problem is, God, seriously, it's kind of personal this, but it's good because that's what it's meant to be. As difficult as this might be. I was never in the right place. I was really guarded before, and life, you know, I was like most people, you know, you never have a great life forever, do you? You know, it's up and down and stuff, and I had quite a lot of downs.
You've had your challenges.
Fuck yeah. And then to be on something like this, you have to be. You can see that I'm touching now and that kind of stuff.
You're thinking about history.
Yeah, thinking about history. But yeah, you have to be really. You have to have no inhibitors to things, and you just have to
live,
be as
so you have to do.
Yeah, and I love live. Yeah, I love the focus live gives you. Pre-recorded.
I do too.
You should watch me in here try to do, and you do the same. Because you were working with me, weren't you, on my website doing movies and stuff, and then it never went down the road that I wanted it to. But you carried on and you do it yourself. Yeah. So you had a studio like mine and everything, and we've kind of doing the same thing. I hate doing pre-recorded in here because I know I'm going to do it 20 fucking times before I get it right. And when it's live, even though there's no people in here, I see the little light on the camera and I present to my minions because it means I don't look at the screen.
Right.
I actually look at Kevin, and Kevin is the audience, and I present to Kevin's eyes because they are 1 inch underneath the camera.
That's good. Yeah.
But there is a different me that presents when I know I'm talking to a live audience than there is when I do my tutorials for the website, because I know I can just hit stop, I'll do it again. And you should see me.
It's also different if you do something for the 20th time because you're doing take 20.
And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You're starting to talk like, man, I've talked about this for 20 times, so let me talk it again.
Yeah, and then when you stumble at every time because you stopped at a point where you thought I can do that better, and what happens next time? You stop at the same point again because you don't get it right again. Yeah. And I get stuck.
I do them live. So I've got a bunch of videos on YouTube on color management, on Color Plaza TV is the channel. Got 1,500 subscribers on there. Yeah. So it's.
Oh, we haven't got that up. Out of all the things we put up here, we'll have a look at it afterwards. We'll put it in.
It doesn't matter. But I record them. Most of them are recorded one take. There may be one little section taken out where a cough or something like that. Yeah.
So do you leave the errors in now?
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
I unless I really royally screw up.
I think even the royal. See, I think natural with flaws is infinitely more believable than polished.
I think believability is the great advantage of doing something in one
authentic. Yeah. Can we just stop for a second while I? Oh my God, we've got more questions. I'm going to have to move.
All right.
I'm going to have to bring this trackpad over so I can scroll and control that screen from that trackpad. because Ron has asked a couple of questions, and there's a few things coming on. Just wanted to notice you look
On the door.
on the door, yeah. So Ron has said, Bowdy, have you ever did colour management for printing presses? Did you
I usually...
or stick with printers? Okay, printing presses.
Yeah. No, I've been mostly involved in digital, because when I started working immediately for a company that had digital printers. They started with electrostatics, which were before any other type of large format printers.
Right.
And I started with that. So I had customers with printing presses with proofing systems that I did do some color management work for. But I didn't do much. I've profiled the occasional press, but that's been a long time ago.
Mm. Okay.
But it's usually printers.
Because what you're saying here is always learn that the paper was the biggest variable.
Yes.
Of course.
And it still is to some degree, although it's not the only thing. I mean, now if you look at printers, there is the difference in papers, and usually the perception that if you have the profile from the manufacturer for that paper, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Which is fundamentally not true. Because a profile that is supplied by your manufacturer for that specific paper wasn't made on your device.
Exactly.
And
It doesn't take your device into account.
Yeah.
That's what you have to have calibration for, right?
Yeah. So if it would work like that, they wouldn't need to make a profile. It wouldn't need a profile, because it would mean it's consistent. And it's not consistent. The printer's not consistent, just like your display is not consistent. If you have your display for over 5 years, you will notice it's not the same color anymore.
Yeah.
You will visually notice it without measuring.
Yeah.
If you have it for a month, you might measure it and not visually see it, but you might measure it. So it's still important to profile regularly both your display and your printer, if you go to print.
So the next one was, I think if I'm right, if you use a printer profile, it will be made at 5,000 Kelvin, so your screen should be 5,000 Kelvin to not have a color management problem. Yeah,
that is, theoretically, that's 100% correct. The problem is that if you're
When does theory actually work?
Well, it does work, but you need to get used to it. So if you switch from what you had before to 5,000 Kelvin, you're thinking, ooh, my screen is completely yellow. And then if you look at that screen for 2 weeks and go back to your native color, you think, oh, that's blue.
Yeah.
Your brain fools you into thinking that what you look at all day long is neutral.
Yeah, but because it becomes the normal.
Yeah. But it's not correct. In printing, it should be 5,000, so your display should be calibrated at 5,000. Arguably, if you put your print not in 5,000 Kelvin, but a cooler temperature, then you could say that 5,000 Kelvin is quite yellow light. And you might have a lot of environments where the light is not 5,000
So what
Kelvin.
do you do when... Okay, what would you do in here? Because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screens in this room. And let's just say my ISO's over there. And if I wasn't me with my past, and I was just going, right, I've got a customer, and he's complaining that when he looks at my work that I'm producing with the Adobe Creative Cloud, and he's judging it on his iPad Pro,
on his iPad.
Because I'm creating designed assets. A design, whether it be a website, whether it be a PDF, and it's going to be viewed on the web. And most of us now browse not on a computer screen, I think. You know, most of my browsing is done on the iPad because it's the line of least resistance. It's the easiest way for me to get on the web. And so if you wanted accuracy to a device that isn't calibratable...
Well, it is. There are now solutions to calibrate.
Yeah, but what? I've had I stopped buying new iPads just because there was a new one. I stopped that.
Yeah.
I was the biggest fan ever of Apple. You couldn't have found a bigger one. There would have been a lot of us at the front of the queue.
Yeah. One
of them's coming on, I think, next week.
Right.
And because we're going to have fun with Apple next week. And but yeah, and I remember there's a particular game that I used to play on my iPad, and then when I got my new shiny brand new iPad, the colours in the screen were completely just different. It went from normal lovely warmth to cold blue. With not one single setting in the operating system for me to be able to change it.
What Apple has
done, changed.
What Apple has done, they used to have sRGB as the default. sRGB was the color profile. Good. And it used to be good because sRGB is not, like some people say, stupid RGB, but it's the standard.
Best. It's the best.
It's the best
because
why is it the best? Because it was based on what the average display could generate.
Yeah.
And if you use
and closer to what we see.
Yes.
Is infinitely closer to what we see than any other.
With more details in steps that you take.
Yeah.
Because a profile is just like a map. If you say, I want a really big profile, then you're using a really big map. Then you know that if you want to maneuver in detail, a really big map, like a world map, will get you nowhere. But if you need to focus on what you can actually use, because you're, compared to a map you want to move in a city, you need a city map. You don't need a national map to move in a city.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's the same with profiles.
I love it. You're in that. Your metaphor that you use. I use a different one.
Right.
I use a golf ball and a basketball.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a similar thing.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I use sRGB and always have. No, I mean, I chopped and changed in the early days of color profiling and stuff, and I went from sRGB to Adobe 1998. I went backwards and forwards, and then just went sRGB. Yeah. Simply because the skin tones are infinitely more believable and correct. And
Apple probably went there because Samsung is claiming that their gamut on their displays is better.
Yeah, but this is my point, because consumers don't know anything about what we're talking about, and nor should they or ever need to.
They don't care.
So if my original point was that I go to that workstation over there and I design something in InDesign using Illustrator and Photoshop, and I then send it to my client, who then says, yeah, cool, but the images look a bit shit. And I call you and I give you that, what do you calibrate my screen to? Because you can't go to the customer and say, oh, let me come over with my Spectro device and calibrate your iPad, because he's only checking what I do, because the idea is that that thing I'm making that he's validating is then going to go out to his customers. And what, are we going to run around the planet calibrating everybody's device?
No, and that's why I'm saying theoretically it's good to do 5,000 Kelvin. If you are in a closed environment and you know that what you're looking at on your screen is 5,000 Kelvin and what you're printing is also 5,000 Kelvin.
Closed environment.
Yeah. If it's
open environment, what do you do?
sRGB. Go to standard colors. Use 6500, because most people will have their screen set to 6500 and make the images look okay using that color.
Yeah.
So if you use that, you're more likely to use something that everybody else is looking at. But if you're in a closed environment, it's fundamentally wrong to do it if you're going to a printer that's not profiled using that. You can go the other way, and you can profile your printer based on that color temperature as well. But it's more complicated to do it.
Okay. Right, let me just carry on. Thanks, Mark, for the comment. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Good to see Mark there.
And then Ron says he just wanted me to look on the door, because I was obviously talking too much just then. So you just need to go, shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up.
And then there was the Affinity Photo. So yes, let me talk about Affinity Photo, because it's in my alley.
Yeah, that's not my thing.
Oh my God, seriously. You already touched on it, okay? And I don't know if you found this out yourself. You know the thing in Adobe where it just makes up highlights for itself?
Yeah.
And no one knows. Did you know about that before I told you?
I came across it when I started developing my own RAW converter.
Right, so you did. So I showed you the
I think you showed it
auto
to me,
recovery.
I couldn't remember, so I just I looked at Photoshop. I saw some options. One of the 68 sliders and then some menus, and one of those menus had different defaults. I'm thinking, but I don't see clipping here, and when I change it to that, I do. That's odd.
So basically, Affinity Photo, I went at it. I bought it immediately as soon as it became not a beta. 'Cause I'm not interested in beta software anymore. I've had enough of wasting my time on that. So I wait for the product. I opened it. I've got a set of probably 30 images that I use as a benchmark to judge any new piece of software, raw converter or something. And I know how much clipping is in each of them. And let's just say I've got images where I know they've been overexposed because I think it was after a week of using my first digital camera and the very first version of Adobe Camera Raw, which you had to buy for $99. This was 16 years ago or something now. It was a long time ago. It just occurred to me that the sensible thing to do back then was overexpose my images because there's loads of highlight detail. I can't see it, but I know it's there and I can bring it back. So why worry about the highlights? Shooting for the highlight was the most ridiculous thing on a digital camera from the moment anybody ever touched a camera, and people only did it through fear of not knowing the unknown. So as soon as I went to the exposure slider and I went, there's loads of highlight detail in there, but I can't measure it. I can't know how much it is. So it's it's an intuitive thing you have to learn with your camera and your raw converter. So instead of bringing in loads and loads of overlays and like doing a raw convert into Photoshop and then another one changing the exposure to get the shadows and then painting in where you want it. It's like, is this really where my industry has gone? It's like, please let me just go snowboarding for the rest of my life.
I actually,
it's
what
ridiculous.
You're describing there, I thought about doing that in my raw converter, just taking multiple exposures of the same raw and recombining it, but you end up with something that looks like crap.
It's a patchwork quilt of opinion, and
then
it can only be shite beyond belief. But the problem is the people who are doing it can't see it because they're doing it, but a 5-year-old child can see it's crap. So the problem has been since 2010, Adobe added auto recovery. Remember that recovery slider? So I'm going to talk to the camera for this one because it's a question. So there's a recovery. Remember when recovery came into raw converters? No, I'll talk to you because it's fine. I'm still learning.
To both.
Yeah, I'll talk to both. So the recovery slider to bring back, supposedly, to get rid of clipping by supposedly bringing back highlight detail doesn't. It brings back the equivalent of McDonald's highlight detail. It's processed shite. And its only purpose was to remove clipping from the screen. And it isn't filling those clipped areas with true highlight detail. It's a processed mush. And I prove that every single time. And I've been doing this, and it's 2018 now. So this started happening in 2010. So for 8 years, every single talk I give, I have to start with. And 92% of the world's photographers use Lightroom, and they would rather kill themselves or their firstborn child than have anybody prove to them that their raw converter of choice is shite. And it's actually 2 out of 10 out the box. Because when I then get maybe 100 or 200 people in the audience and I say, so how many Lightroom users? And it's always like 90%. And then I go, okay, so then they see me using what I use. And I still use Aperture because it works on my machines and I love it. And I will use it until it's gone. Although that is changing slightly now because I've kind of gone down capture route and things and trying to make that work, but even that is a nightmare trying to get the colors right.
Get different problems.
To get the colors right is just really difficult. But anyway, so then I've got 90 people and they sit there like this with their elbows out. Body language is fuck off. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't care what you say, go away. And you ain't going to tell me nothing. And unfortunately, I do a demonstration in 1 minute to show them what their lovely raw converter does, which basically in probably about 2/3 of the shots they take, it automatically adjusts them for them on their behalf by auto filling in the highlights and not letting anybody know it's happened. And still today, there would be more than 90% of all people professionally have no idea that's happening.
No, because you got to find it first. I mean,
and guess what? Affinity Photo does exactly the same shit. Because Adobe do it, so you're a developer, your job is to monetize your idea because there's no point you doing it. It may not be one of the reasons probably you're sitting there is because you're not money driven like me. I don't do things to earn money. I just happen to make money doing what I like doing. So I'm quite lucky.
It's a nice coincidence.
It's a nice coincidence. But I don't change what I do to make more money.
No.
Okay. And so, but when you're a developer, you need, in a sense, you probably fall into this. The purpose of your software is to make, maybe you want to give it a kind of a unique selling value. You want to give it a unique
the
angle, and you want to kind of take something that maybe could be a bit difficult for people and do it for them. So you've got you've got a cutout app, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. But basically, what I try to do with apps is create a simple solution, which is not the most high-end solution out there.
Oh, of course.
But it is easier to use and cheaper than the alternatives.
Yeah.
So one of them is for photographers is interesting, is green screen photography. So it's called Picture Me.
Yeah.
And it basically allows you to take a picture of somebody in front of a green screen. It automatically removes the backdrop, and you can select with a pop-up menu background and put an overlay on front, and then do whatever you want with it.
Right.
And it doesn't require any knowledge. You just have to set it up once so you get the right cutouts, because you have to obviously set the filter so it matches your light. But it's much easier to do than trying to do it in Photoshop. And it's not so sensitive, because a lot of green screen applications are like, it needs to be all even green.
I know, I learned that with my green screening that I do in here, or my blue screening that I do in here.
Yeah, with Wirecast.
The lighting, oh man. I just thought, all you have to do is go and buy a nice green screen. No. And if you bleach the light, and if you put too much light on it, then you drain the hue.
Yeah.
Because my very first job I did as a video editing person was I had to do green screening of people with glasses.
Yeah, which is always fun.
And then girls with glasses with really, really, really wild curly hair.
Yeah.
And man, me and this guy, and we just chucked the lights on there, and I had big hot spots and stuff. And then I just said, we need to test this in the software, so give me a bit of video, and I put it in, and it didn't work. And we had to move the lights back to take away the intensity of the light, to leave the hue and the color, because that's what the software is looking at.
Well,
but evenness is really important.
Evenness is important, but in the app that I made, it's much less important.
Right.
So it looks at basically which color is the background. So it doesn't say this is the color that I got. No,
it doesn't have to be green.
No, it can be green, blue.
Whatever the background is. Do you touch on it? Do you just touch on it and that's it?
You have a slider. You don't have to touch it. It recognizes the backdrop.
And then you just move it until you get the best
cutout.
cutout.
The sensitivity, so you remove all that needs to be removed and not too much. Because when you move the slider all the way, you will probably lose too much. And it's pretty accurate, and it's quick. So it works. And it also tethers your camera, which is also nice, because then you can actually, from the software, say click, and your picture will be taken into the software. It will be made transparent and put on a backdrop and with an overlay on it.
Can you make it so it just creates transparent and export it as a PSD with transparency, or a ping with transparency?
Yeah, but it's not. It wouldn't be to your standards.
Okay, yeah, but that doesn't matter, because my standard would be depending on the work I'm trying to create. If I'm only doing something that's going to be seen on an iPhone or an iPad, then it's more than good enough. Yeah. So within that kind of thing, okay,
that's exactly why I have two versions of the software. I have one that's the light version, and that actually allows you to export up to 1,000 pixels, which is great for anything you do online, because you don't never need any more than 1,000 pixels for something you do on a screen. But if you want to do print, you might need more. Then there's a pro version.
Well, the point was democratization. Okay, so when you're a developer, your angle to try and sell it, and obviously when you're selling a solution, you want to sell it to a load of people.
Yeah.
If you sell a solution today that requires somebody to go off and get training, are you going to sell your software?
No.
No, full stop.
Yeah.
So what has happened to our professional apps? They become democratized.
Yeah.
So what they do is they put loads of stupid crap in them that supposedly do things, like the one in Photoshop, go and make a mask of all the things that are in focus.
Yeah.
On principle, I went, holy shit. I can do something with that now, which is going to be amazing. But when I automatically run it over 1,000 images, it's only successful about 20% of the time. So I just go, we'll park that and we'll throw that away.
Yeah.
So the thing with the raw converter doing the auto recovery is that the philosophy of people who make raw converters today is that they want the users to see the raw converter as being the one-stop shop.
Yeah, which it isn't.
So they want to be Photoshop too.
Yep.
And they all have exactly the same features.
That's a principal problem. That the raw converter is nothing like making from the ingredients something that you can then turn into something that is delicious.
Yeah.
Once you get it out of the raw oven, it's not delicious yet.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, with Adobe 8 years ago, setting a precedent that the industry, and this has always been my stance on this, you can't blame Adobe for doing it. They're retarded for thinking it's a good idea. Mm. And I'd love the guy
that wrote
who the guy who wrote it was only following instructions, right? The guys who write software are not the marketing people who say, "Hey, let's have this feature." No. I know.
Unless they're
unless they're a one-man band, and then they're not Adobe. The people who make Photoshop is probably
a bunch of people,
200 developers, and they only do one little bit. Yeah. But there's marketing people who go, "Yeah, we've been talking to people. Yeah, who you been talking to? Who did you speak to who said, let's actually have an algorithm in the software so that when I get my file and I plug in my compact flash and I copy my images over, before I even get to see them, you are going to auto-interpret my files and distort them from what the camera wrote."
It goes fundamentally into the grain of why you use RAW in the first place. If you want to do that, why don't you just shoot JPEG and start from there?
Well, because there's so many RAW converters on the planet and they all look different.
Yeah.
So the way I try and get people to see it is, you judge a RAW converter not by how many wang bars.
No, just
and try really hard not to judge a RAW converter by how many of your friends use it. Because being a sheep is just not a cool thing. And certainly making an opinion when it's a sheep-like opinion is just the worst thing ever. So have your own opinion. So just simply get a file and put it into Capture and just export it without touching it. Well, and then put it into another one and then put it into another, print them out or put them on the screen at the same time and just ask yourself, without knowing where they came from. So remove labels and all that kind of stuff and just look at them and say, what's my best start point? Because that's how photography used to be with film.
But you look at your best starting point so you can use your actions to improve in further on.
Yeah, but that's much later.
Yeah, but it's different.
They don't run inside RAW converters.
Because a lot of people use their RAW converter to get to something that is close to what they will use.
No, it will, no. I mean, like most people now, the vast majority of people, they don't go anywhere near Photoshop unless they have to cut something out or do something that their RAW converter doesn't. So when you look at the evolution of RAW converters, all they've got is more and more and more features that are in Photoshop.
Which is exactly why I created a RAW converter that has as minimal sliders as possible. You need to have some sliders because you've got to be able to set something.
So yours is what we talked about, where you just want to get into Photoshop as quickly as possible. Use the RAW converter that's in the operating system. So your RAW converter is not actually your RAW converter.
No, it's Apple's.
You've just made a shop window
interface
of an interface. Yeah, you've got an interface to the RAW converter that's in the operating system.
And then I decide I don't want those 50 wang bars that nobody needs, and I just put in the ones that I think are needed because they're essential.
Yeah.
But you do have limitations because the limitation that I now have is that Apple only recently in Sierra and High Sierra fixed a problem in their framework which they did not solve until that. So exposure, the very first version I created, exposure didn't work well on any system that wasn't new.
Yeah.
And now I can do it well on Sierra and High Sierra, but still, if you go to El Capitan or older, it's not perfect.
It behaves differently.
I do something that does something similar to exposure control, but it's not actually exposure control. And I cannot fix that because that's the basic engine that Apple has provided that doesn't have that functionality because it just doesn't exist. Yeah. So that's a bit limiting, but the nice thing is that Apple does have a bunch of frameworks and libraries available that you can just use. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can still make something that works. I have the same thing where the app I'm currently working on. It's tethering 6 cameras at the same time. So there's 6 cameras on a rig that are all pointing to the same topic, and you take a picture simultaneously with all of them. So basically you could ask somebody, on 0 jump in the air, and you could take a shot with 6 cameras simultaneously, and then it creates an animation from that.
The bullet time animation from the Matrix.
Matrix, which is why the product development title is Matrix.
Without the Matrix, would you have even conceived of that idea? Would anybody, without the Wachowski brothers? I mean, come on! What did you see in that bit where
they start
Carrie Ann Moss right at the beginning, because that was the story of the Matrix Man for me was just it was unbelievable. I go to New York. It was my girlfriend's birthday, so I said, "Let's go to New York for your birthday." We go there, and it was in May, I think.
Right.
Can't remember. And we're walking down the street, and I'm telling you, I've never seen rain like it. Never in my life. It just went black, and it went boom. And it would be no different if you just got a bucket of water and tipped it on my head. And it came down, and I'd never been in rain, apart from in Ireland, when I'd never seen rain horizontal before. But that's what you get in the west coast of Ireland.
It's not green for no reason.
Yeah, no. And so I just grabbed hold of her, and I just went right, and we went into a door, and it just happened to be a cinema. And I knew nothing of the Matrix because they did no marketing for it. I will get back to the Affinity Photo Endgame.
Eventually.
I've got that in storage for you. And then I just said, why, instead of going to see something that we think we'll like, why don't we go to the worst film on the wall? So we went down all the posters, and up until that point, I absolutely hated Keanu Reeves in everything. The whole Bill and Ted thing just made me want to punch somebody. It's just crap. And I never got it. It never worked for me. And so I just went, Keanu Reeves in a full-length black leather coat with sunglasses on, standing there. I thought, that's got to be shite. So let's have a laugh. Let's get loads of popcorn and chocolate and then go and watch this, and hopefully it will go over. And then it started, and all I wanted to do was leave. And I'm fighting with myself. And then Carrie Ann Moss is upstairs on the phone in that room. The police come up. And then they say, yeah, I've sent a squadron. And the policeman turns around, who's the agent? And he says, yeah, your men are already dead. And then she goes in, and then she jumps up in the air, and it's bullet time. And then the camera goes all the way around. And then it just carries on from the end game. And she kicks him in the mouth and flies up against the wall. And then from that moment, it was,
how did they do that?
And I'm in this field, and I know about animation, I know about movie making, I know about photography and colour and stuff, and I was just like in a trance for the rest of that film. And how much has that film, if you unravelled all the different films going off in different directions and all different technological advances, how much was influenced by that film? Everything. I mean, I'm watching a lot of stuff on YouTube at the moment, and I got educated into the red pill, being red pilled. Do you know what red pilled is?
No, I don't actually. No.
Right, being red pilled is you take the red pill, and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Or you take the blue pill, and you just go back to your life, and you stay in that shit. McDonald's processed food existence you've had. It comes from the Matrix. Being red pilled is being educated into reality. Somebody who is walled, closed-minded. There's many, right? And then we meet them, and probably I am in a lot of things, and you are too, maybe. But when somebody comes along and you have a conversation, it changes your mind. That has become now a metaphor. Red-pilled is when you've had your mind changed and opened into a particular subject matter. So it's huge. Just go to YouTube and type in red pill. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. But anyway, Affinity Photo, the end game is, I love the idea of somebody else bringing out a piece of software in my field of image editing that wasn't a camera manufacturer or Adobe, because they've just got this complete monopoly now on creative art. So I love the idea of somebody new doing it. And then my enthusiasm waned after about, 30 seconds, when all I saw was they've just copied every piece of software and every feature in every piece of software that I think is shit. There's nothing new.
Yep.
But the only good thing about it is that it can get better because, you know, it's still in its infancy, which is brilliant. And it is the only software in my lifetime in this field that has given you the ability to use channels in the image in your processing of an image, and that's obviously the core of what I do. Using channels means you can quadruple the quality of everything you do rather than just wanging sliders along and being in the matrix. I've just found a new metaphor, because wanging is that's my term, but that's actually living in the matrix. That's when you're in the matrix, and when you learn how to use channels, you've been rescued by, who's the dude? No hair.
Terrible names.
What's his name? What's his name? Who's the dude? God, I can't remember it. I've watched that film about 200 times. What's the guy's name? Morpheus.
Oh, right.
When Morpheus comes along and he takes you out the matrix, that's like when you understand what channels can do to your image, and that's really my process. That's my process.
Fundamentally, the channels are part of the standard framework that Apple offers. So you could quite easily do something with channels.
We need to talk.
Yeah, the problem is that you know exactly what you want to do, and I don't know exactly what to do.
Yeah. So at this table right now is the raw converter from the gods.
Well, I don't know from the gods. Your knowledge for it is there.
It is.
I'd have to make sure that what I can do is actually still fast enough to do it.
The problem would be is that you'd have to come here and work for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I would have to tell you exactly what I need it to do, and then you just go off and make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's not working for me, that's working with me, but I know exactly what I need it to do. And I know I've had the opportunity to go off to a whole bunch of people and make this thing happen, and all the members of the website are screaming at me, why don't you make a raw converter, man? Make a raw converter, make a raw converter. If I was in my early 20s, I would never have my website.
No.
I wouldn't be teaching people.
Yeah.
Because I'd be building products, and I would have this kind of thing of wanting to be a billionaire, and I'd want that to be used by everybody, and I'm not. So I don't, that's not my mantra. And
it's feasible to do something that's better because you fundamentally know what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because basically you do it in your actions, and you need to do something similar,
if you see,
but more on a lower level.
What I do with Photoshop with the actions is massively dependent on the raw file you do it on.
Yes.
And although I only ever change color, temperature, and exposure, so when I'm judging a raw converter, would red pill it would red pill everybody. It would be over. I mean, honestly, what raw converter do you use would just like it disappear from vocabulary. It just wouldn't. Nobody would. It'd be the end game. And everybody could create it today.
What could happen with it is that you could create something that would be more like a solution that not just the people that care about the quality enough to bother with actions and running those scripts in Photoshop, but actually appeal to a lot more customers that could get a much better image just by pressing a button.
But you see, absolutely. But
the thing
what I find is when I go into somebody's studio and I go and I speak to them and try to help them and install a workflow for them that they can use. So I might go to a portrait photographer, or there's some really big companies that I work for in catalogs, online stores where they photograph the product and they put it up on their website and loads of people buy them, and they take their own stuff, and they obviously then they're doing loads of photographs and they have to process them. So I'll go in and I'll teach the whole staff how to get more accurate color, because when you're doing commercial work, the color of your beige top, your rain jacket there, it's really bloody important.
Because people will like that.
So this is where is where people then go, oh, we need accuracy, so let's jump all over X-Rite or whoever and get loads of products for doing color profiling, because we want accuracy. Because there's no point me taking a picture of that beige tertiary color. It's got a large amount of red, green, and blue in it, so it's very sensitive to any error. There's no point me shooting it and then putting it up on an iPad or on a phone or on a screen and then the customer thinking that it's that color, and then it turns up in the post and it's a different color.
Yeah.
So they're anal about accuracy of color. It just has to be right. And then they think that bigger is always better, right? That pro photo, the color space.
Yep.
And no, use sRGB, man, and it's going to be infinitely more accurate all the way through the production line, in my experience.
But for the average consumer, it is very simple. If you have a gamut that's bigger, that's better. If you have a resolution in your printer that's higher, that's better. It's both very much bullshit.
Absolutely. But the point I was trying to make is that they're anal about accuracy about color, and then we'll use a bloody RAW converter that distorts the image from the camera manufacturer's belief of what that shot should be, distorts it, and distorts it badly, and then use that as a start point.
I have a question on that, because I never see you use a actual profile that was generated for the camera that the picture was shot with.
Never. Because I come from the. I think it's just a bullshit idea. When you are in a
if you're in a controlled environment.
No. When you're in a closed environment, of course I'd profile my camera.
But then still, it's something that you've never shown, I think.
No, because none of my people work in that. And there's no benefit to that, because
there people that
because I can do exactly the same thing, and we're actually doing it at the moment in the action. I'm putting in some new layers into the action to actually to act as profiles.
Yeah.
Because there's the going down the route of profiling where you have to spend money on loads of profiling equipment, and I haven't seen a profile editor that will allow me, after I've done the zit. And when I have watched people do this, and I've done it myself, where you do the print and then you make your print profile and then you go zip, and it goes makes a file, and then 10 minutes later you can do the same zipping and you get something different. I'm just pissing in the wind. Okay? So you've got to say, is it 100% accurate? No, it's not. Okay?
Yeah.
So
what
I want is, if there was a piece of software that enabled me to have a really cool interface to the profile, okay, the same thing, okay, so I could, as a consumer of this product, be able to go in to select red, because by following the instructions and doing it to the letter, everything was cool, but reds were just a little bit off. And I could just go into red, and I could just put a little bit more cyan in red and take a little bit of yellow out of red. Use exactly the same algorithms, but just with a different interface. That's exactly the same thing. And then I could then have a human interaction to the profile to just tweak it the way I want it to be tweaked. Then I would jump all over it. But at the moment, when there is no, I'm not saying there isn't software to do that, but there is software to do that. But why the hell should I have to spend more money to get more accuracy when I can do exactly the same thing by just having a selective color layer in a pre-stage before I process the image that deals with the inadequacy. So when red is wrong in my raw converter, the principle is I'd love to be able to go into it and change how it deals with red. Yeah. But I don't know a raw converter that allows you to do that.
No, but if you use your camera profile that you created for your cameras, not your print profile, but your camera profile, it does help.
In a very closed environment, because I don't know anybody. I don't know any, and in a studio environment, I don't know anybody that does landscape photography who profiles their camera.
It's useless.
So then what are we talking about?
Well, for studio photography.
But when I started learning all this stuff in the days before digital, and photographers defined themselves not by the camera that was hanging around their neck, but by the film they used. Yeah. Every film had a unique quality. Yeah. I think I can still remember that Ectrochrome, because I was a scanner operator, I knew that Ectrochrome, I could tell, because in the sprockets of the transparency, I could see Ectrochrome. I learned very quickly that Ectrochrome was very cold. Yeah. So we had a setting on the scanner that would combat the natural organic coloration of the film. Yeah. And then Kodachrome was very warm, and we would do something to neutralize it back, to just take away that, so that if there was a transparency that was Ectochrome, an image that was shot on Ektachrome on the same spread of the graphic design that was next to an image that was Kodachrome, well, then you'd be able to bloody see it.
Yeah.
And you don't want to see that. You have to remove that color cast to make them look like they're continuous.
Yeah.
And they have continuity. And so I learnt that ages ago. But the great thing about Ektachrome was it was always blue.
Yeah. Consistently blue.
Oh, only when I do studio shots and this. You're just going round in circles,
that's true.
thinking that there's a gadget out there that's going to remove the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And my view is I'm the gadget to remove uncertainty. And so what we do now is the easiest way for me to do it and to put it in the hands of the members is to just say, this is how you think about color. And the best color mode to manipulate color is selective color that visually looks like CMYK. And Photoshop is the only piece of software on the planet that gives you a color mode or a model that works in CMYK.
Yeah.
Everything else is hue and saturation, which is like, I describe it akin to Duplo.
Yeah.
You've got Duplo, and you've got Lego, and you've got Lego Technic. And Adobe Photoshop, on face value, if all you are is a Photoshop user, you're playing with Duplo.
Yeah.
And every raw converter is Duplo. They're tools for the masses.
Yeah.
That means you don't have to go to school to work out how to wang that slider across. Because you can just go, love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, that's the whole thing. If you want to create an interface in a raw converter that is based on CMYK, you gotta
No, I don't want it based on CMYK.
No, but that works in channels, let me put it that way.
I need to have an interface that allows me to go into red and change the amount of cyan in red.
I know, but then
you're
changing channel information in that image. So you need to have some interface that allows the user to control that in an intuitive way, which is not easy. Because you know exactly what you want to do because you understand it. But most people who see an image just know it's not exactly right. So they need to...
But tell me something in life where you get the best end game, whether it's cooking or running, because we'll talk about that in a minute, because we've got to get the running in.
Yeah.
Or anything where no education and self-taught gives you the best result.
Oh, that's true.
Never, not once, ever, period. It's the line of least resistance.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested ever in the line of least resistance, period, ever. Because if I find myself following it, or my analogy is when everybody's doing that over there, like using Lightroom, why would I want to just do what everybody else is doing to feel secure in what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Just through curiosity, I'm going to go in the opposite direction to find out what they're not finding.
Yeah.
Because to find out what they are finding, I only have to be a part of the group. And then they're not finding anything new because all they're doing is sharing shit that they all know and all doing the same.
Well, it's becoming more standard because it's now a logical bundle as a photographer to have
Photoshop
and Lightroom.
Of course it is.
It's,
But so basically, Affinity Photo, great concept. One day they'll get there. Really good thing that they do is if you go in the preferences, somewhere in the preferences, you can do what all raw converters should do. And this is actually for anybody that works for a manufacturer of raw converters like Adobe and Capture, my two kind of ones that I have to use, is please, seriously, ditch the ego. You know nothing about color. You don't know what a good image is. You don't know what makes a good image. So stop thinking that distorting the image from the camera manufacturer's wishes. Because anybody that's I was only chatting to my friend yesterday about the fact that the truth is today, people put a lot of intellectual energy into what camera they will use. And a lot of money, because they're not cheap.
No.
And then they go and buy a really expensive SLR camera. And then they look at, the first time they see the proceeds of that camera is when they look at the image in a raw converter. And they're not seeing the image that the camera has provided. No. You're seeing what some person has decided that image should look like. And that person isn't from the imaging world, that person's from the computing world. And so sadly for me, Affinity Photo, if you put any image in Affinity Photo, it's the worst start point out of all. Right. It's got the worst colors, color makeup. Yeah, you can alter it, but why should I have to? if we're looking for precision in our workflow and we put all our resources in the front end, don't I honestly want a workflow where what Nikon decide the color should be is what it should be all the way through until I decide it shouldn't be? Not have a blind conversion made by an arbitrary company that go, no, 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 it should have loads of clarity on it. It should have loads of contrast, and we're just going to go ding with the colors. And then most consumers just go, wonderful, I don't have to do anything.
But that's the whole thing with images. If you ask standard consumers, I did a test once with printouts. We had to do printouts at events, big events with thousands of people in the arena in what is now the Johan Cruijff Stadium, and we had to select a printer. And I knew up front that the printer that people would prefer was the one that was most saturated. It wasn't most accurate. It was just most saturated. Yeah,
of course.
And 9 out of 10 would say, oh, I like that one best.
No, but we are, as human beings, not professional colour people or designers or anything. We are attracted to contrast. And the analogy I give all the time when I give talks is when you go round to somebody else's house, when you come to my house, my TV is set up so it's natural, right? So usually I'm watching a football match or a rugby match or something like that, or I'm watching a sporting event. I want it to look natural. Okay, so
you'd be annoyed if the
I
grass
don't put the brightness up and the contrast up and the saturation and the sharpness up. And you go around to somebody else. I used to go to my parents' house and go, what the? And then I get the remote control. Don't touch the remote control. I've got it just how I want it. There's no detail in the person's face. It's flat because you put the contrast right up. So as a consequence of contrast, you lose detail. So half of someone's face will go missing in terms of transition. And then over the other half, it's like, and what are you looking at, dude? And so we're attracted, but we're attracted
it's the same people that think,
contrast.
I bought a really wide TV, so I'm going to stretch my image so that it fits into that wide image. It doesn't matter that everybody's head's no longer head-shaped, but at least it fills the entire screen.
But look, we are attracted to contrast, so it's understandable why we want more contrast. It's just very few people understand that when you add contrast to an image, it's at the sake of, it's at the expense of the image.
You always lose something.
You have to lose something. So contrast has to be really carefully controlled when you apply it. And carefully controlled is an or doesn't work, wanging around with a contrast slider. So let's go to the curve and do an S shape. Well, I don't know. 26 years ago, we knew that S shapes were shite because they changed the color of everything. But if it increases the hue and saturation, man, that's a great side effect. Yeah, but the skin tones have gone orange. Yeah, but they look good. But actually, somebody who's made quite a few comments over the last couple of weeks, who's quite interesting, has just said, yeah, but it's not that people are not learning color properly.
No one is teaching it.
It's because no one's teaching it, and that is absolutely on the money. Because I teach when I used to go on tours, which I'm starting to do again this year. I think I don't know what that's going to be like, but I'm going to go back on tours again. And I would do paid for speaking events during the day to pay for the tour and everything else and to make some money for the business. But then I would go and teach at universities for free in the evenings and or at camera clubs for free in the evenings. And in universities, holy shit, no one is. Because the use of software is reducing knowledge because the software doesn't require you to have the knowledge to swim in the industry.
As long as you can slide something.
Because imaging
it's not increased in quality.
Because it's been democratized. You don't need to do a 2-year apprenticeship in just understanding color to be able to have a job producing color anymore, because it now pretty much, the analogy I use all the time is that you don't, I knew this guy, so I'm going to use this. This came from the truth. I had a friend who was a fireman, or I became friends with a fireman who moved into photography because he was made redundant. He got a severance package of 20 or 30 grand, and obviously he had to sit there and think, how do I pay the mortgage? So in that state, he had a choice. Now, he could have had a lifelong ambition to become a brain surgeon, okay? You could have had an affinity with surgery or being a doctor, because working in the ambulance profession, he probably would have been around people who got injured.
Yeah.
Now, we might have had a great affinity to that and had lots of dreams of, God, I wish I'd become a surgeon, I wish I'd become a physician. But the problem is, when you're presented with mortgage payments happening, I need to make appointment, and I need a career change, line of least resistance is, I can go and do something that is like the Zen moment in my life, and I can do what has meaning to me. But that could take 8 years before I could, and there's no guarantee at the end of 8 years of learning. You'd have to change your life completely, downgrade it so you can go on an 8-year learning course and only maybe make the grade.
Yeah.
Or you can become a wedding photographer. And that's what he did. He just looked around and he just thought, what can I do to earn money with the least amount of knowledge? I can go and buy any SLR camera, stick it in P, point it at a subject, and I can get something. It's never going to be the best image in the world, but the technology produces an image, which means, without me knowing the first thing about photography, I'm only going to be a percentage away from somebody who really knows their shit, right? So the difference now between having no knowledge and being supreme is actually quite small. And so that person can invest 10 grand in kit, a computer that's fast enough, a nice screen, maybe a printer, and a couple of cameras and a few lenses. 10 grand easily. Could do that. He's got a new career. Doesn't know the first thing about anything.
Doesn't need much. No.
Doesn't need to know the first thing about color theory. Doesn't need to know anything about anything. And in my experience, he's probably doing a better job because he's not overriding the kit with knowledge from previous kit, okay? Thinking he's an expert because he's always done it this way and imposing on that kit actual massive errors of judgment and creating problems. Just leave the kit alone. Do a great job. And so that's the problem with today, that the kit is now so easy for us to do a lot of the things that you would want to do, that no one is forced anymore by being in the industry to have to learn the theory that goes underneath. You could be a 30-year... I mean, I do it in my classes all the time. I just say to the whole audience, and it really, really pisses them off. And they start talking about colour and this and that. And I go, so what happens when you put blue and green together? What colour does it make? I feel like I'm the last polar bear on that iceberg that is shrinking as it's heading south. I just feel like I'm the last polar bear. And so you can't begin to talk about colour with any sense of authority unless you know what colour is. And colour isn't, oh, it's red, now it's green. Stating the obvious slightly. And what makes green?
Well, you need to understand the fundamentals to be able to come to the concept that you use in your actions. If you wouldn't understand the fundamentals, you would never be able to do your actions.
Well, no, you can use the action, that's fine, but what I do is I don't just make solutions and give them, because that would be me being a software company.
No, but you still
Every
allow
single
control.
thing it does, I teach how it works, what is happening in Photoshop, every mask that is being used, every blend diff that is being used, it has a purpose. I had a 2-hour Skype today with one of the longest standing members who, I love it. I just love it when I present something and then they go, Christ, that's shit. What? Because you're so used to it. Oh wow, isn't it great? Isn't it great? And then suddenly, every once in a while, this guy calls me up and he was really tentative and he just says, "Did you really mean what you said in that webcast when that skin tone being reproduced with the portrait action?" Because I made the statement, I can't understand why anybody wouldn't want to do that, and I actually said that. And then he said, "Well, I don't want to do it. It's shit." And then I go, huh? And then he was right. Of course he was right. Because I forgot a sentence that was, "This is the most extreme you can make it portrait orientated."
Right.
I forgot that sentence. If I'd have said that, I would have absolved myself, and it would have been okay. And then my members would have
because
known.
that's also the style that you like to do your work is you want to make something that is still natural, that doesn't make people like think, oh, they are so
nothing's
pretty.
contrived.
It's they could be actually real. They're looking better than they did probably.
Oh no! This was awful. It was shite beyond belief.
No, but that's why you think it's shite, because
No. I know you're trying to bail. You're trying to be nice to me here. I'm punching myself in the face. It really was shite. It was horrible. But I showed the demonstration of the philosophy of doing a portrait-orientated processing or retouching is every single step in the whole process has to use different channels to be able to make it look good. And Affinity Photo allows you to use channels. It's in an awful interface, but it's the first application that allows you to use channels. So I am all over it. I can't use it because it's the worst start point. The image is so far away from the camera manufacturer's idea of what that image should be. That I can't even begin to look at it. But I will continue to buy it every single time, because eventually, and then I even forgot the bloody point I was going to make. In Affinity Photo, they are the first of the mainstream applications that allows you in the preferences to go into the preferences and say, don't use our RAW converter, use the operating system. Use the operating system, and it's called Serif or something. I haven't seen it for a really long time, but go into the preferences and you at least quadruple the image quality when you use Apple's operating system RAW converter, because bar none it is a light year ahead of anything else that is out there, period. Anything else that's out there. So that's all I want. Capture needs to just not put more shite in the software. It's already got enough shite in the software. It needs to, in the preferences, instead of saying, oh yeah, you can go back to Capture's bloody engine from whenever, Capture 2 engine. I don't give a shit about that. I want the operating system, native, RAW converter engine in Capture. You give me that, I would be the happiest person alive. Adobe need to do the same.
Well, Adobe giving you all those options to go back to how it was over the years,
and they're all bad.
Doesn't make any sense, because they're not better. They're all worse.
They're all just different. And the new one is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
And I don't understand why they come up with new versions and don't compare it to the oldest one they have, which is actually better.
But these profiles, because they've put the word profile in there. Why are you making the profile? How do you know how I want the image? I know how I want the image. Build me a bloody interface so I can build my own profile. And then I can tap into an interface that controls the actual RAW converter engine. I can build my own profile to my own standards, thank you very much, because I know what I want. I don't want to have your crap start point that I have to decompress. I have to undo your shite so I can then go and do it properly in Photoshop. And that's where we are at the moment for me. So they're all different.
But it will get better. I mean,
the thing with the Affinity Photo, I just like the idea that they've added channels. And I can't use them at the moment because it's just not ergonomic and it's just ridiculous. But the way, the steps that you have to do to actually use a channel to do anything, and then it's light years away from Photoshop. But once it gets closer, there will be a point in time that, because it allows me to use the RAW converter, and this is the other problem, even if I use the serif or whatever it's called, they may have changed the terminology because I haven't seen it for a while, even though I can tell it to use the Apple RAW converter engine so I can get the same coloration as from Aperture, it still does auto recovery in the highlights. It still distorts the highlights by doing its own thing. It's not your place to do that. You know, it's not your place. Understand your place in life. But see, they all have the ego that they think images in our software is better. And so they they retouch in the profile to distort it from reality. And I think at the point of conversion, all we want is accuracy to what I took a picture of. If I want it to be different, better, enhanced, that's my choice as a retoucher. It's not your decision to make on my behalf, and don't give me the option to turn off your shite. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So what setting should be changed then? It's the serif setting. It's in the preferences somewhere. The other downside with it is that you can't seemingly turn off auto recovery in modern contemporary RAW converters because they all do it. Yeah. But the other thing that you lose is you lose all the lens correction abilities. You lose all of them. So
that's also something I found in the framework of Apple. There is a lens correction function, but I haven't gotten it to work. Yeah, I can enable it. I don't think lots of things
in Aperture they didn't really get it to work either. It was one of the weakest areas completely. Can I just do this from Jules? Jules, you dude, you're back again, man. Guy, thanks. Running, be aware of running. He looks like he can run you into the ground. No, he can. He's done. How many marathons have you done?
I've done 13.
13. Yeah. Okay, so look, we have only got...
It's a good line to come on to the next topic.
I know. I mean, look, we've been talking for an hour and 44 minutes. Does it feel like that?
No, not really.
It doesn't, does it? No. We can get rid of monitor calibration. Who cares about that shit? But anyway, you didn't know about this, right?
No, breaking 2. It's
seriously, dude. Seriously. Okay, so me and running...
I hope that's not your... ambition to be breaking 2
at 54. No, I don't think. What's that therapy you can have? Gene therapy. What's that therapy where they inject you with cells? Stem cell. Right. I don't think there's stem cell therapy that I can inject to any part of my body that will turn me into a gazelle. And these dudes are seriously, man.
But to be honest, 2 hours is not impossible. Even if you set your mind to it, you can break 2 hours.
Marathon, no human has done it. No, this is a marathon.
Yeah, nobody will.
No, they
will. But
he was 12 seconds outside 2 hours. Yeah. I'm telling you. So he didn't know anything about this, and he's a runner. I've done shed loads of running recently, and it's just become everything to me. Right. But when I got back from Madeira and I did that job, I got the worst cold I've ever had in my life, and I had pretty much 6 weeks. After 4 weeks of having a cold, I thought it was gone until I went running. And you would know, if you try and run and you've got anything wrong with you, oh my God, I thought I was going to die doing something that I could do in a really good time.
I always get out, when I get the flu, it happens after I do an intensive run. Right. Because your body is recovering and it doesn't have the energy to fight with.
The point is that you don't know exactly, just because your nose stops running is not when you've got rid of it. No. And only running has taught me that. Yeah. That the major symptoms can be gone. I think, yeah, cool, I'm okay. And then I go for a run again.
You're not okay.
Holy shit. So I had to have another 2 or 3 weeks because I ran 3 or 4 times and my body reacted so badly that I just thought, well, I'm clearly not over it yet.
But it's also you didn't run for a couple of weeks before that.
Yeah, and so I've had like 2 months. And yesterday, because you're sitting there, because I knew you would say, so what? Because we're going for a meal and our table's booked for 8:30, so we've got 40 minutes to get to our meal. But their last orders is like 10 o'clock, so we've got a big window of arrival. And so I knew that running would come up. So yesterday, which is my first run for 2 weeks, I did 10K. Because even in the last 2 months, the 5 runs I've done, I've only done 5K. Right. And 5K is now just that's nothing.
No, it's just a wake up.
That's a wake up. Yeah. That used to be like Everest to me, because I only used to do 3K and used to go, well, I think I've been running. I've done my run today. No, you've just not even done a warm up yet.
It used to be for me as well. I did no sports at all until I was 21. I hated sports. I got tired from just thinking about sports. Yeah. But I started, and then 5K is tough. Yeah. And you have to stop 4 times before you can run 5K.
Well,
but it grows on you. So when you manage to go through a certain stage, when you manage to go to a certain pace, where
you set another thing,
and you get to a stage where you think, I'm now running without getting more tired. I can run this pace much longer, and I'm not getting out of breath. Yeah. There's normal breathing. And you can do that forever.
That's what I must admit, I've said to you a number of times, not every time I go running, but most times I go running now, I hit a sweet spot where I'm running at the right pace for my body and my condition. Yeah. And I've run 8 kilometers and I've got 2 to go, or I'm running 15 kilometers and I've got 3 to go, and I'm thinking, I'm not even out of breath.
Yeah.
And I know because when I'm passing other runners, I can go, hi, good morning.
Yep.
You know, say hi to each other. Now, a few years ago, I'd have been going, good. And if I stopped to say hello, it would be, oh, it's over. But I'd been running for a while. And then I went on a trip to the UK a couple of when this came out. I think it was last year, or maybe even it was the year. It was actually, I think maybe even. Oh no, it was last year. This was on, and I went and stayed with my friend in Wales, and I was really pissed going to the UK because I knew I wouldn't be able to run.
Yeah.
And I woke up at some stupid time in the morning. You know, modern day phenomena. First thing you do is you check your phone, which is really evil and bad.
Yep.
But I checked my phone, and then I just went, breaking 2, what's that? And it was on Twitter, and I clicked it, and there was a movie playing in Twitter, and I could hardly see it. And basically what happened was Nike, for the last 3 years, well, up until they'd been running, I think it was a 2-year endeavor, they got every single scientist, nutritionist. They designed brand new shoes, which I had in my hand today. They're $150. And they guarantee a 10% or 15% increase in speed because it's got a carbon fiber, spring-based sole thing sat in this thing that gives you a spring. And they brought in every kind of technological advance to not break the record in a competitive environment. So it wouldn't have been the Guinness, because a Guinness World Record has to be in a normal marathon. Okay. What they did was they selected 3 runners, and they gave them 2 years. And for the final year, none of the runners could run competitively. They had to focus on this one thing and go through radical training regimes. Diets. I mean, everything, even the bloody fabric that they even looked at the fabric to get the right fabric to give them the tiniest 0.1% event. And then they had these other runners, and this was the thing that broke the rules of the Guinness World Record, the Guinness Record, Guinness Book of Records, was that they had these pace runners that were interchangeable. And they went to Monza in Italy, the F1 track, and they just kept running around the track to run the marathon. So every time they passed the start-finish line, a fresh set of pace runners, and they formed a V in front of them.
Oh, right.
So these 3 runners didn't have to run against the wind. They tried to eliminate every single thing to give...
That's a big difference. I've run, in Barcelona, I've run a marathon where we had to run along the seashore with a headwind. And I cannot run against the wind. I'm too light. So I try to keep the pace that I do, but I cannot. I fly back. So it kills me.
No, but they measured that, you know, even the wind that is generated by yourself. So even if there's no wind, you're still running against atmosphere. And creating your own by running. And these guys run really, really fast. So the wind they create is really big. So what they did was they created a kind of a space where they had a V formation of, I think, 6 or 7 runners. And each runner would be there. And then they had a car in front that had a laser that produced a line on the track that was the pace. And I'm telling you, man, there was one guy who dropped out after about half. Another guy dropped out after about 2/3, but they still wouldn't not finish. They still finished. And the man, I'm telling you, the guy who got there in the end, this guy, I've never seen anything like it. And I watched it live for 2 hours on Twitter on my phone, and he missed it by something like 10 or 12 seconds.
Ooh, wow.
And all that happened was, on the last lap, the car just edged away, and this little green fluorescent laser line
was super frustrating to see as a runner.
But what it proved was it's doable.
Yeah.
And Adidas are doing the same. They've got their own one, and they're doing it in a race.
But is it really? I mean, I've had Nike has come up with a new shoe that was the greatest shoe ever, as well before. So isn't it largely a marketing hype?
What isn't?
Yeah, that's true.
What isn't?
Yeah.
I mean, but you know, in the great scheme of things, they had an endeavor to try and get one of these guys, and honestly, you have to watch the whole thing. You'll find it. I mean, you just go on YouTube, watch Breaking 2, and watch the whole thing. It will take like 2 hours and maybe 3 hours. They had some ridiculously stupid stuff where you just think, seriously, you know, comedians telling jokes and stuff in the stands, thinking maybe people would be bored. Just like, shut up with that stuff. And they also had these guys, after an hour and a half of running, they had this guy, right? And then at a certain point in the whole endeavor, they had a guy, when he reached a certain point, they had 100 meters line, and then he was running faster than the guy can run 100 meters after an hour and a half of running. Holy of holies.
I don't know if you've ever, well, you probably in a sprint have tried to run 20 kilometers an hour. It is really fast, and they do it for 2 hours.
Oh, I know. Well, the thing that I found, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it in time here, but I after my time off, thought that after having nearly 2 months off, 6 to 8 weeks off, oh God, I'm climbing the hill again to get back to my time. And I did 5K. Now I can't remember, it's on my phone, and I don't want to waste time on that, but I did 5K. My normal is like a kilometer at like, I always wanted to get to 1 kilometer in 5 minutes,
right.
A 5-minute kilometer. Yeah. I just think for a 54-year-old who's not a serious runner, that's a good pace.
Yeah.
4 minutes. After having all this time off, I went once, stiff as hell. I thought, oh my God, the pain of this now getting back. The very next day I went, and I just went, okay. Because there's a guy that I watch on YouTube, I found on YouTube, who is my sergeant major, the person that talks to me in my subconscious when I'm running. And he's a guy called David Goggins. If you don't know about David Goggins, just watch him. And he was the guy, actually, he was the guy who made me go from 3K to 5.
Right.
I won't tell you why, but you listen to the beginning of how he became the fittest man on the planet from being what he used to be. The start point he was at to becoming just a monster of fitness.
Right.
Who does ultra marathons every weekend for like 6 months of the year or whatever. But his mindset was, and I just went instantly from 3 to 5. And then within probably a month of doing 5, I went straight to 10. Yeah. And then now 15 is in my ballpark. Yeah. And now I know that if a gun was to my head, I could do a marathon. I know I could. Yeah.
Well, but the difference, I mean, there is a fundamental difference of anything under 30 and over 30.
Yeah, yeah.
Because over 30, at one point, your body will, with every fiber of your body, start to object to what you're doing.
Of course.
And asking you why the hell you are doing that. Yeah. And when you get a bit older, it might also be pains that actually arise that you think, oh, this is not going to be good for my system. So running a race, a marathon race, is not healthy. Training for it can be very healthy. But it's been my problem. That's the reason why I've done 13. The last one is now like 5 years ago. Is that the last one I did, I started to feel pains that I didn't want to feel. And I'm thinking, I enjoyed the training, but I'm not going to be faster than the previous one because I'm getting older. And I suffer from it because it really hurts. And it's probably not good for my system to do it. It's the load you put on your system when you run a marathon is comparable to a heart attack.
No, that doesn't. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a stupid thing to want to do. Yeah,
it's not natural.
But it's something I want to overcome. So basically, my challenge is, and I'm probably going to make the decision today when we go to dinner, because we've talked about this already, right? So when he, a while ago, saw that I was like massively now into running, it's the most important thing in my day. Yeah. To go running first thing in the morning. If I don't do it, my day is nowhere near as good as if I do.
That's a good thing.
And for somebody who's mentally just a little bit kind of out there, it's the best medicine.
It is the best way to start.
When I haven't done it for such a long time, I notice a difference in myself now. Yeah. So yesterday I did 10K, after not running for like 3 weeks. And I'm telling you, I've got an exact 5K lap from my house around the canals. And at 5:30 in the morning, I see about 3 people.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yep.
And it's beautiful. And then when I do then the 10, I do it twice. And then yesterday I did the first one. No, I don't want to tell you my time. My time, I ran an average for 5K at 4 minutes 25. I took 45 seconds off of every kilometre for 5K than my fastest time that I ran before.
Right.
I beat it by an astonishing time because I just visualised, okay, I go and I try to beat myself. You know, that's the whole point of doing it. I'm measuring myself every time. I've got the app and everything, and I know the pace, and I'm trying to beat myself. But am I really trying to kill myself? No, because I've got to go to work, man. Yeah. It's like I'm not going to ruin myself.
That's why a 5K distance is great for that, because the 5K can get you really out of breath, but not for very long. Yeah. Once you're sitting down for 5 minutes, you're fine again, and you feel more energetic than you felt before you went for the run. Yeah. It's different if you do longer distance, and that's something you still have to experience. If you do really long distance,
of course, then
you just get exhausted, and it's different from getting out of breath. Yeah.
No, I just visualized one day, I just said to myself, how fast could I really do 5? Because I want to break 5 minutes. That's all I want to do. And I thought that's going to take me 6 months. And a friend said to me, he said, no, I beat it by, I remember what it was now. It was 4 minutes and 40 seconds. And my fastest had been 5 minutes and 15 seconds. So it was just over 30. It was about 35 seconds quicker per K. Yeah. And so one day I just left the front door and I just went, okay, let's go for it. Let's leave everything I've got out there. I mean, I want to be absolutely on the floor when I finish. Yeah. So I just thought, well, okay, my philosophy is always never run hard in the beginning. The first K is a warm-up for my body, so I try and do it at like 3/4 pace. And then at the second K, that's when I start to then think, right, start striding, get into the form, let the muscles stretch a bit. And then I did the first K in 4 minutes 20 seconds. That's not slow. Which I never even thought was humanly possible for a 54-year-old fat dude that I used to be. And then I went, is there something wrong with and there was nothing wrong with it. So then I'm just thinking, hold on. So then it was just about holding form, and then obviously it declined. Yeah. But I then kept it at 4:40. And for me, it means I broke my goal by 20 seconds of just going sub 5 minutes per K. Yeah. I had no adverse reaction to it. I wasn't as tired as I thought I was, and I still think I could be another 20% quicker now because I know what I'm dealing with.
If you purposely train for it and you train almost daily for that distance, you can definitely improve. Oh yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to beat any record or anything. It's just the only measure of improvement in your general health, and I know I'm object driven. You know, I'm challenge driven. That's what I am. You know, I love it when members throw me a problem. You know, they send me an image and I'm having a real problem with this, and I look at it and I go, what? Oh yeah, okay, let's find the solution. You know what I mean? You need to be challenged. Yeah, I'm challenge orientated. I'm deadline orientated and stuff. Yeah. And so I went yesterday, and I'm telling you, the second 5K I did yesterday, it was humiliating. It was just, I was so glad that it was only at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, because only about 20 people saw me. You know Phoebe in Friends? I don't know if you ever saw the running in the park. Imagine, I don't know if you ever saw that episode, but she just had the funniest run in the world, and the whole episode was just taking the piss out of her for running. And all I could visualize was me looking even worse than that. I thought somebody was probably going to, if anybody saw me, they would have called the ambulance to make me stop, because I was in such a, I've never run so slowly in my life. And then all day yesterday I was so stiff I could barely climb the stairs to my apartment, and then that's a good sign. It's a sign you've done something.
Yeah, and then
as long as you only have that for a couple of days.
Not even one day. I just thought I was not going to be able to run again for at least a week to recover. today I don't even feel like anything happened yesterday. So
The only time you have muscle aches is when you didn't run for much too long.
yeah, yeah.
If you run regularly, you don't get muscle aches from
My
running.
problem is, I got down to what I want to head down to in terms of weight is I want to get down to 70 kilos.
Yeah.
And then see where I am from there. I know I'm going to have to come up from there, but I want to know what it's like to be 70 kilos for once in my life. And so my ambition...
Well, you've been there at one point.
No, I haven't. I haven't been anywhere close.
I hope
The
you weren't
closest
a
I've-
75
Oh, no,
kilo
yeah.
baby. But
in the delivery room. But no, but considering that I was Mr. Stay Puft off of the Ghostbusters film not too long ago, about
no,
nearly 2 years
I
ago.
remember your silhouette looking more like a pregnant lady than you.
Shit, man, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so I've done a lot to get that. But in the last 2 months, I must have put on 6 kilos easily, and I'm hating every minute of it. So
we're going to have a good meal
as from
to compensate.
we need to. I haven't been to this restaurant. We're going to. I'm taking him to Madeline again today. As long as you don't mind walking there, and I'm walking back to the car.
Yeah, me and walking never.
Yeah, I walk everywhere. Everybody tells me here I have to get a bike, and I go, yeah, but I love walking.
Yeah.
And everything is so close here. Why get a bike? And then I'm never going to have a crap bike, so I'm going to buy a good bike, and then all I'm going to do is worry about my good bike being there when I come back out.
Yeah.
So why buy a bike?
Yeah.
I buy a skateboard. I like the idea of coming to work on a skateboard. Get the big long ones with the big wheels that go over the cobbles.
Right.
When I see somebody going to work on a skateboard, I just kind of want to do that.
Well, what's stopping you?
Nothing. And now the weather's here, and it's not going to be slipping and doing kind of drifting as it goes around corners in the wet. It could be the right thing. I'm just going to have to see this from Jules. Use a heart rate monitor. I used to all the time.
Yep.
And if your resting rate is 10% higher than normal, don't run. So are you saying, Jules, that that's how you know whether you're over the cold in your core?
Yeah, I think that's correct. If your resting heart rate is higher than normal, you know that your body is still fighting
struggling.
something.
It's fighting something.
And it could be...
Oh, God. Dude.
But
Jules.
it's you have to have because it's not the same for everybody. So your resting heart rate is also, of course, very variable to age.
Let me read that again. If your resting rate is 10% higher than normal. Okay, so when you're in really good condition, you should measure your heart rate.
Yeah.
And then that way you know whether you're actually coming down with a cold or whether you haven't fully recovered from it.
The problem is your resting heart rate you can only measure best
if one is coming, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that I was going to say...
But you have to measure it when you wake up.
Yeah.
So before you can get up.
Yeah.
So the first thing you have to do is slap on
Apple
your Apple Watch.
Well, the thing is, you see, I've got the bloody Apple Watch, and I'm telling you, man, this is what really pisses me off with tech. Because I know I'm in tech, and I purport it, and I teach it and everything, but I despise tech. Because shit that used to work, you wake up, you do a software update, and you can't get it to work. Can I get this thing to send the heart rate monitor to my Nike app? It's really easy to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
When it happens, and then a software update came along.
And it doesn't work anymore.
I have handed this to people because, it's really patronizing because, I know about this shit. I know about the options. And then it's working. I like the heart rate because it's a way of knowing that it's not as stressful on me. So I know I'm getting fitter. I want to be fitter. I want to live a little bit longer.
Yep.
And so then an update comes to
and
either
it destroys it.
And I just can... The whole thing is synced, but it will not synchronize the heart rate.
That has happened to me at least 5 times.
But I think what I need is one of those heart rate monitors.
They're much more accurate.
They're much more accurate. So I think... I've got one at home that somebody bought from me a really long time ago, and I've never used it since I had this. But Jules, one more thing to ask you, my friend, is then all this running stuff, because I know you are a fitness guru... Two, is that can we have a Skype soon? Just a Skype. I know you need to come and sit here one day. Okay, you need to come and sit here one day, and I'm sure you will one day. But it would. You see, Shark was in that chair last week, and the thing I noticed about Shark in the very early days was he's a vocational photographer. He's a photographer who has never been anything else, and that is rare.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying there aren't other photographers, because
No.
we have to deal with that, because that's what life's like today. He's not the only person that's ever been a photographer, but he is like absolutely exception to the rule. And the thing I loved about Jules, when I met Jules, we worked together on this project. Fuck it, Jules, if you came here and we talked about the Widman's project, man, what we used to do, what we made happen, and this is a long time ago, and I imposed a lot of my workflow ideas on this job we used to do, and I'm not going to ruin the chat I'll have with him about it. But Jules was a geologist.
Okay.
Trained as a geologist.
That's something
and so when
different.
you see somebody who approaches what you do, but from a completely different perspective, and your conversation is completely different, but even though you're getting to the same end game, but the way they see it, because of their training in whatever field they've been trained in, like yours as well, would be different. Like we deal with color images, but you come at it from a completely different perspective to mine.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it, and that's the reason for doing this, because the thing that used to be the takeaway moment from all of my public lectures and talks and stuff and things I used to do, seminars, was the thing that would leave a lasting resonance in my head would be the conversations I had afterwards. It wasn't the bloody lecture, because that's a dictatorship. That's just me giving a monologue.
And that's something you've trained yourself to do, and you sort
Yeah,
of
you
do it
just
on
do the
autopilot.
same one you did in the same country you did using yesterday, and no one's going to know because they weren't there, right? So it's fine. But it's the conversations and the people you meet afterwards and the conversations you have. And then I would be in a conversation maybe with you, and then we would be surrounded by probably 200 people, never saying a word, because all they're doing is listening to the conversation. And that always stuck with me when I was giving lectures, that the most interesting part of my day was after I finished, because then there would be like a large amount of people.
There's always a large group of people that stay there. With most lectures, when it's done, it's done. People walk out. Yeah. With you, there's always a lot of people that still want to have questions answered.
Huge.
You get a lot of feedback, and then it's more interactive.
Yeah, because they then say, but this is the photography I do, or this is
you get more specific questions.
And does it work with this, and does it work with that? And you go, of course it does. It doesn't work, because, when you pick up a camera and you point it at a tree, the camera doesn't go, I've got to somehow do something now. I'm a landscape camera. I mean, it's the same bloody photocopying device. I mean, just because you see a tree doesn't mean the camera sees anything different. It doesn't see a tree. It just sees light.
What a tree is.
It just sees light.
Yeah.
And it's made me the man I am. Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I don't know why, but I am going to persevere, and I'm going to have to learn how the skills of conversation, because I never learned it on a personal level, because all I ever did was work. And when you're stuck in a dark room on your own all the time, you're not really having many conversations.
Not many. But
and then I went into being a boss, so then you're not having too many conversations, because you're not asking people their opinion, you're telling them. So that's a monologue too. And then when I'm a presenter for like 20 years or whatever, then you're only ever having a one-way deal. So then I had to put the sign up there just to say, shut the fuck up, dude.
You have people actually talking back at you, and that you need to listen to it.
So I think the first 20 of these is going to be really interesting to see if I learn.
Yeah. Well, what might be good is to ask your viewers what they would like to see that they don't see you do.
You just did. So, so he just did. It's not something I would ask, because... It's not what I would ask, for a whole bunch of reasons, which I can't say. I really want to say, but
nothing will be bleeped out here. It's all
not at all. It just is what it is. But yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it will. And also the other thing you see is I don't have comments on the end of these. This is one thing I actually would like to know from people, because I know that it doesn't have a huge audience or anything, and I have no ambition to ever monetize. You'll never see adverts on these. No, sure. And I am not looking for clickbait, the number of views. in any way, shape or form. So I don't attribute success in this to, oh God, there's 1.5 million views. I mean, that I would actually not like that to be the case, because then I know I'm pandering to the masses, and then no. But what I do want to know is, do you think it would be a good idea to open up comments on the movies after they're recorded when you watch them, when this is recorded, and then you watch it after when it's not live? Is having comments on that? Yeah.
It's only useful if
don't care about you. Sorry.
You better. It's only useful if you do something with the comments. If you're not going to read them and reply to them, it's useless.
Well, you see, the problem is that once it gets more than 3, then my dyslexia kicks in, and my attention span, my ADHD just kicks in, and I go, I'm not here for this.
So you can do it, but then you would have to have somebody to moderate it for you.
There is somebody who's going to be doing that, but
and then take the important questions out and have those answered.
What I'm concerned about, the only concern I have is what I see on many videos. It just turns into a bitch fight. You see people arguing, you see keyboard warriors.
But it
gives you a chance for feedback, but you see, the problem is, absolutely, because this kind of stuff that I'm reading here is considered.
Yeah.
And then how much do you see anywhere on the internet, on social media, where you just see juvenile shite and then people bitching and moaning and just spraying their egos all over the place?
What's Twitter filled with?
Yeah. I missed most of this. Yeah, you'll be able to see it from the beginning in probably just a few minutes, because oh Jesus, our table's in 15 minutes. And what else did we want to talk about?
We have to run.
We do have to run. So look, Breaking Bad, just watch it, because seriously, the dude in the middle, he missed it by only 20 seconds.
Breaking Bad is another one. It's
no,
also
not
very
Breaking
good.
Bad, it's Breaking 2. And I think they're going to go for it again, because that guy, he was gutted that he didn't do it, because he knows he could. Because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
You've got to do something to know where your level is, right?
Yeah.
And seriously, and I watched that, and at 6 o'clock in the morning when it finished, every single molecule of me wanted to go out running, and I couldn't, because I was in the wrong place, staying at a friend's house, and nothing but huge, great big main roads and stuff, and no pavements, and it's mad. I mean, seriously. And then they had cars with cameras pointing perpendicular at him, seeing his profile, because I wanted, because when I run, when you get tired, you lose form, right?
Yes.
So what I do is I have certain points on my route where, regardless of my physical condition, I think form, because I've learnt that there's different styles of running depending what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's really, really fast, short strides, and then there's him, gazelle man.
Yeah.
And they are striding.
Very long steps.
Very long. And when you're striding long, your heel is touching, maybe not on your heel like that.
No, but you're rolling.
But you're rolling.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's really comfortable, and there's less jarring.
Yeah.
Short is your tippy tapping.
No, that's not good.
And that's really, I can run faster. When I ran my fastest time, I was doing tippy tapping for half of it.
Yeah.
But I've got these long stretches where I do kind of interval training, where on certain stretches in my thing, there's nice long straights, and then I just go, right, here's probably half a K, maybe 2/3 of a K, and then I automatically follow form, and then I go striding to try and just get some condition so I can run faster, longer.
It's also why you're improving, because you're not simply going up, coming up, or getting up and going for a run of 5K. No, you consciously do different styles of running. The key to getting faster is not always run at the same pace.
Oh, absolutely, because I'm never the same person, because physiologically you're different every time you go out and run, and it's just learning where I am. Then I can go, right, I do this run because it's better for me today, and then that helps me warm up better, and then I always try and make it that this one particular long straight, I pretend I'm him, and then I have David Goggins here going, move sucker. But seriously, David Goggins, seriously, you cannot be not affected in any way by watching what this guy did to himself and how he changed himself. He chose to become a badass physically, and but it doesn't matter. Whatever you choose to be, what you're not, it's not your physicalness and your experience that is going to enable you to do that. It's just your mind. And I learned a long time ago.
It's dedication to wanting
it's
to
just
do it.
changing your mind. So that time when I knocked off a huge amount of time was I was the same person with the same capability, and all I did was I just said, stop being a pussy and running within yourself. Even though you're pushing yourself and still running within yourself, try and find what's outside yourself. Is it possible for me to go further than what I believe I'm capable of? And I went 20 seconds faster than I thought I was ever able to run.
Years ago, you set your goals very low because you basically were saying to yourself, "I can't run at all."
Line of least resistance.
So now you're actually seriously trying to be faster.
Yeah.
And
so anyway,
helps.
we've got to wrap this up, and I've got to tell you what we're deciding in probably about half an hour when we sit down and have a beer. I am going to tonight with you make the decision that
whether or not
in October,
November, I'm not sure when it is.
Somewhere in either October or November. I'm hoping it's November because I hate the heat. November. Amsterdam Marathon, because I'm goal orientated, and I always wanted in my life to be able to say before I died that I ran a marathon. Not because I want to run a marathon, because that's a disgustingly stupid thing to do. I want to do the training for the marathon. That's actually what turns me on. That's the thing that turns me on, the training for it. And the training starts really in about a month's time. I think you need, 5 months, 4 months?
No, I usually take 3 months, but that's...
Yeah, but you're already at a good level.
If you're at a good level...
I've never done one before, so I think I need 4 to 5 months.
No, you can't do 5 months. If you do 5 months, you'll probably exhaust yourself before you get there. But we'll discuss that.
Yeah, that doesn't make too much sense to me. But I'm sure you'll red pill me on that one.
There's a certain curve you follow in how many kilometers you do, and you can't stretch that too much because it doesn't help.
So me running every day is just a bad thing if I want to run a marathon?
No, because the place where you're at, where you still can increase a lot, it makes sense to run more. But if you're doing long distances as well, you have to put that in a schedule where it makes sense. So you have to put your mileage in that.
Well, that's what I want to do. I want to go. I'm going to be a guinea pig to myself and to the Nike running app, because the Nike running app has got this thing that says, "What's your objective? What's your goal?" And I'm just going to go run a marathon. How good are you? Pretty shit. Pretty average. And when's the marathon here? And then it gives you. And I just think I'll do all the other stuff that I do as well, because I do T25 and all that kind of stuff at the moment. And supplementary stuff and weights and things, but still just in the early phases because it's still hard. And adding the gym to it, I think next week as well, and yoga. But I want to see if following what they say is the plan. I'll see what you think about it too, but I can't imagine it's a bad plan. It might be differing to somebody else's, because I'm sure loads of people will think they know the right plan. But I'm just thinking I'll stick with the plan. I'll do the supplemental stuff as well, and then see what that does. And then that way we can follow it on the vlog and on here and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. And I need to go and eat because we've been gabbing for far too long. So guys, thanks for watching, and see you next week. And next week's going to be funny. Apple.
No, we could have done a little bit of that too, but
but you can come back, right? I'm sure you'll come back. Anyway, look, we're going to go. So I'm going to come out, and I never know how to end these things. I think the thing you do is you just hit the button and stop broadcasting.